Oh, God. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast, hosted by #basketball.com and draft.com, where if you go out to draft.com right now and use the promo code BOXES, you will get a free entry to your first draft. I am your host, Mike Catron, and joining me as always is my co-host, Tyler Watts. What's up, Tyler?
Oh, Michael. How are you today?
You know, I'm doing pretty good. The weather finally has kind of cooled off a little finally. You could actually go outside without considering taking a shower again. Like, it's going all right. It's going pretty good.
Oh, come on now. You got to love a shower, Mike.
Not a huge fan of the showers. If I could, someone could just hose me down on the way out of the house. I would take that. I don't got the time. I don't have the time to shower.
A 1920s bath?
Yeah, just the old hose.
All right, fair.
We've been doing some new things here. So, you know, if you're just joining us for the first time, we are going to be really ramping up our off-season podcast. And we have a new thing going on. We're trying it this season. We've built a decent amount of listeners, and we really appreciate that. And in order to keep the podcast going, we've started our own Patreon. And so if you really enjoy the show and you want some exclusive content, maybe you want to join our listener league, maybe you want access to Tyler's rookie rankings before we release those on a future podcast. And also, you know, there's some extra treats in there where we're going to give personal, like, you know, you can join our Slack channel and actually get direct advice from us. We're going to be doing some Q&As. So, like, we have a whole bunch of features planned for our Patreons. And if you go to patreon.com/watchingtheboxes, you can subscribe. And that, you know, it helps us out. It allows us to continue to bring really good content for the podcast and support the podcast, basically make sure it's being hosted and make sure you are actually getting that content. So we really appreciate it if you go check out patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. I'm excited about that Patreon. I think we're going to have some really special stuff for the listeners, Tyler.
Oh, no doubt. I will be releasing some great content on there and maybe some exclusive content that you don't even hear on here. So.
Yeah, we'll probably have a podcast, maybe even that we do for the Patreon subscribers. And I know Tyler has a special Dynasty League that he's setting up, and so, you know, this is a one-time thing. You can't get into the Dynasty League next year. You know, this is a 1-year entry because that Dynasty League is going to go on forever, just like all Dynasty Leagues, right, Tyler?
It is going to be fantastic, Mike.
And Tyler's got a really good plan for that. So if you want to get into that Dynasty League, we already got someone who's joined. So get out there, get on that Patreon, patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. Let's talk about the big news, Tyler. Let's just get right into it. The foot has finally dropped. That's not a phrase, is it?
I don't believe it is. I think you made that up.
The foot has finally dropped, and Kawhi Leonard has been traded to an unsuspecting team. I think late in the Kawhi talks, Toronto did start to be mentioned, and I guess the Toronto odds dropped suspiciously in Vegas, which is obviously something making some insider money on this trade. Maybe it was Pop. Do you think Popovich put a bunch of money down on Toronto and then traded on Toronto?
Dude, he's like, I got to make some money somehow.
Yeah. You know, they're not, you know, they're
he
just going to be
in Vegas for minicamp this coming week, right?
That's true. That is true. I'm smelling conspiracy here.
Came out a little early, dropped a few dollars down.
Yeah. Had a surrogate, dropped some money on Toronto. Well, Kawhi Leonard is now a Toronto Raptor. He has moved to the East. He is the only legit all-star in the East. That's right. I said it. And or superstar. I guess there will be some East All-Stars, even though I think if they changed it to like no conference affiliation All-Stars, I'm not sure how many Eastern players would actually make it.
Oh, well, you got a couple guys on the Sixers. Kyrie Irving always seems to make it, right?
Yeah, I guess there's Kyrie.
Fans love the Kyrie.
Yeah, all right. Well, there's a couple guys. But Kawhi, who has apparently reported and passed his physical in Toronto, is allegedly going to be playing for the Toronto Raptors. And DeMar DeRozan, the Toronto legend, is moving down south to pay no taxes in San Antonio. And that was a pretty big move. That's a two, All-Stars moving. Basically, it wasn't a one-for-one trade, and we'll get into that. But that's a rare occurrence.
Yeah, right. I mean, we don't normally see two big names going for each other, right? It's usually like stars teaming up, and so this was definitely a very interesting trade, and a trade that probably doesn't get made if the whole circus of Kawhi last year doesn't go on. Like, even if Kawhi says, like, I want to be traded, right? If he played last year, especially once the Spurs doctor said he was healthy, I don't think we've seen this. And then now, I mean, obviously with the reports today, maybe the Spurs medical staff is not looking very good at all.
Yeah, I have no idea if Kawhi can play, or maybe like you're saying, the Spurs staff is not up to par. I'm not entirely sure where the bad blood, like how much bad blood is in that situation, why there's so much bad blood. It's mostly because Kawhi Leonard is a mute. The dude hasn't spoken about anything ever. And I don't know if we'll ever find out.
Yeah, right. Probably not. I mean, we'll probably never really know the whole story.
Yeah, I like the chance that Toronto's taking here. I think that that team had stagnated even with LeBron gone. I really like Kawhi in Toronto. I really like DeMar in San Antonio. Like I find that trade I feel like it's going to lead to some interesting basketball.
Yeah, right. And this is the kind of stuff we always like to see in the NBA. It's just some shakeups and what's going to go on now, right? Can Toronto finally win the East with Kawhi, and what does DeMar bring to the Spurs? Which, I mean, that Western Conference, like, is, other than the Kings, right? Like, even the Suns are kind of interesting. Like, every team is just, like, okay, I could see these guys being a lot better, or I could see
every
these guys
team except Charlotte is interesting.
Charlotte?
That's right. I went there. Yeah, Charlotte is not interesting at all. I'm not interested in that team.
Well, I mean, when is Charlotte in the West?
Oh, I thought you meant every team in the NBA.
No, come on, Mike. There's lots of non-interesting teams around.
No, it's every team but Charlotte.
The Bulls? I mean, come on.
The Bulls are really interesting. What are you talking about? They're an up-and-coming team. They got Jabari Parker, hometown kid, hero, local hero, Jabari.
Oh, Michael, you've been drinking the Kool-Aid again. So, okay,
yes.
let's get into some
fantasy. Let's cut to the fantasy.
Some fantasy questions here. Ranking of Kawhi Leonard right this moment on the Toronto Raptors.
Knowing what I know.
Yeah, right. I mean, like,
which is about his health, which is nothing.
Right, and literally we know nothing, right? Like, he passed his physical, which sounds good.
That's positive,
but
right.
But we heard reports last year that the Spurs medical staff had cleared him to play, and then he played 9 games, and then he sat out again because he wasn't healthy, and they kept saying that he was probably healthy enough to play, and he kept saying he wasn't. So does that even matter that he passes physical?
It matters a little bit, right? And I think this is going to be a lose for Kawhi Leonard no matter what happens. If he comes back and plays really well immediately, well, maybe he was sitting out on the Spurs. And if he comes back and can't play, well, I guess you're not getting paid. So he's going to have to come out and try to play. I guess I'm going to be a little bit on the positive side with Kawhi Leonard. I'm going to get sucked into, I think what I got sucked into last year was that I thought he was going to be okay. I think he has to have a pretty good season this year. And even if he plays 60 some games, I probably have him around 13th, 12th.
All right, so kind of a fringy first rounder then, right?
Yeah, if you're in a roto league, I'm even more interested in picking him up if I can be assured via some preseason action that he looks healthy. I'll probably move if he looks healthy, completely healthy in the preseason. I probably move him into the top 8.
Oh, into the top 8.
Yeah, he's Kawhi Leonard.
All right, I wasn't expecting that, but okay. So yeah, right. We've seen 2 really awesome seasons of Kawhi, and we've seen some other very good seasons of Kawhi, and even last year, right? Now, granted, it was 9 games, but you look at the numbers, he was playing very well in 23 minutes a game.
Yeah.
So we got to think that when he's on the court, he's going to be really good. The question is just how much is he going to be on the court? And I don't know. I'm concerned about this injury, but I'm not super concerned. I'm kind of in on Kawhi in the top 12. Probably not quite the top 10 yet, but once I see him on the court, I think I might get there too.
Yeah, I think we all should reserve our right to judge that prior to the season as we get closer. But moving to Toronto, do you see his game really just changing in any way, or having to adjust to their style of play? You got Kyle Lowry, who does like to have the ball in his hand quite a bit more than I think the guards in the Spurs. But Kawhi's never a guy who really needed to be the primary ball handler.
Yeah, right. I mean, the most we've ever seen is Kawhi average 3.5 assists, and I don't think that this is really going to affect him a lot, right? One of the things that's really good about Kawhi is his defensive stats, and you got to think that those are going to be there. And the fact that he can score 25 points a game,
that's positive.
Right, DeMar was doing that, so
there's plenty of shots to go around.
Right, so I don't really think his game changes a ton. The biggest question about Kawhi for me is if you're starting a dynasty league, okay, Kawhi's 27 years old, but are you knocking him down a little bit, considering pretty much everything I've heard about this injury basically says it's a chronic thing and it could flare up at any time, and it basically there's not any way to fix it, right? You can't just have a surgery and fix it, right? It's always going to be there.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely, especially with the influx of young talent that's coming into the league. I think there's a lot more opportunity to take young guys who've already proved themselves, for one, like Karl-Anthony Towns and Giannis. But also you got, your young Ben Simmonses and Joel Embiid. There's a question about his health too. But I think you can make enough excuses not to pick Kawhi Leonard in a dynasty league with one of your top picks.
Yeah, right. And then the question becomes how far does that go, right? In a startup dynasty league, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in the future too. Is I'm always trying to win in year one, so my rankings usually don't look much different than they would in a redraft.
Yeah, there's some slight adjustments, right? You push up some of those younger guys. Maybe in a regular league, you would have LeBron over someone like Jokic in a redraft league, but with Jokic's age, you would want to switch that. I mean, it's stuff like that.
Yeah. So here's my question, and you kind of hit it. So would you rather have Kawhi or LeBron in a dynasty league? So Kawhi's 27, right? Significantly younger than LeBron. You gotta think that. Well, maybe not. Maybe LeBron is even better this year, right? We don't. Really
LeBron's probably better this year. LeBron could be better next year. I think a lot of, and I guess we got to get on a little of a dynasty segue, but I think a lot of people don't look at a dynasty league and go, man, you really just got to get that young talent. And contracts can be traded. People can be moved. LeBron having a good year this year, someone's going to want that LeBron next year. Like someone's going to want LeBron in the middle of the year. And so really you want to look at it like you were owning a team. Like assets are important. And whether you have a young guy or who you're going to own for 10 years or an old guy who's performing, they're all movable depending on who's competing for a title and who's not.
That was total cop out. You didn't answer my question.
No, that's not a cop out, Tyler. I think
who are you going for?
I think I'd draft Kawhi in a startup dynasty over LeBron.
See, I'm going LeBron.
It's probably the right choice.
And a lot of it has to do with what you said, right? Like if I realize I'm not competing for the title this year, I move LeBron and get some younger pieces. And if I am competing for the title, I want the best player this year anyways. So give me LeBron.
Yeah, he's going to be one of the best players. Let's talk about the other superstar in this trade, DeMar DeRozan. I think kind of a fantasy
freak
in the know player, kind of like fantasy guys like him. That know what they're doing. They like him a little bit more than I think rankings usually have him, or even the casual fan will like DeMar DeRozan. People are pretty lukewarm on DeMar DeRozan, but as a fantasy player, I've always thought he's been underrated for many years.
Yeah, right. Kawhi. Yeah, I'm still talking about Kawhi.
I'm thinking about Kawhi. He doesn't care about you.
DeMar just does a lot of things that go under the radar, and I think a lot of it might have been playing in Toronto, right? Like, how many Raptors games do some people watch in a year? Like, other than the playoffs?
I think about 3. I watch about 3 Raptors games a year.
And so it'll be interesting to see if the new move to San Antonio affects his perceived value, right? Because I don't think it's going to affect his actual value a ton. Right? I think he's going to do DeMar DeRozan things.
Now, I was going to say, like, do you think the pop system where you got to move the ball, which is not DeMar DeRozan's forte, but also like the quality shooting coaches there, that could lead to DeMar DeRozan working on his 3-point shot. Do those kind of, I guess, balance each other out? Like, when you get a little good, you get a little. He's going to have to adjust though to the pop systems. He's going to be worse, or is it just going to be all positive for him?
Well, I think that we know. I don't think players like this change their spots too much, right? Like, he's gonna be DeMar DeRozan. He's still young, right? 29 years old next season.
In the middle of his prime, yeah.
Right? Like, I just don't see him changing a ton. And people in Toronto would always say this about him, right? He always seemed to find a way to get better. Like, last year, he averaged 5.2 assists. He never averaged more than 4 assists a game.
Yeah.
In a season, right? Like, he always just found a little way to get better. And I think that the Spurs are going to love that work ethic, and they're going to find ways to make him that little bit better. And even if he plays a few less minutes, or, you know what I mean? I think he's going to maybe be a little more efficient, and the scoring's still going to be there, and so are the assists and the rebounds and the steals. And so I'm in. Count me in.
You know what I'm into? I feel very confident in drafting him in his normal position, which is probably like the 4th round, late 3rd, early 4th is probably where DeMar usually gets drafted. That might be a little bit of an upsell, perhaps. Where do you think they usually have him, Tyler?
Well, this is the thing that makes him find his way on my team a lot. I think a lot of times he's like in the 40s or 50s, and a lot of times I have him in the early 40s or maybe late 30s, and so that's kind of a little bit of discount there. But on the Spurs, I think maybe he gets that bump up that he's always kind of deserved, and he probably goes maybe closer to where he belongs.
Yeah, his name is in the news. He's on a new team, so people will be thinking about him come draft time. And he's also one of those players that are like one of the last guys you can get who scores more than 20 points a game. And so he's often
sometimes he last, right?
Yeah, he usually is the last, and so you really, a lot of people when you need him, you got to pick him up. So I think it's going to be a good change in the situation for DeMar DeRozan. But you mentioned earlier, like, he's 29. He might prove a little bit, but he is who he is. And Pop might get the best out of him, but he is who he is. Let's not kid ourselves that there's going to be a giant jump in DeMar DeRozan, but I feel very positive about his outlook.
So, this is worth mentioning, right? Our man Mark Roberts has released his fantasy basketball rankings for the year.
One of the greats.
And he has DeMar DeRozan 48th.
Interesting. So I really enjoy Mark. We are going to have Mark on the show to talk about his projections and how he calculates them. And I really, I'll save the details for Mark to explain to you. But he does it in a very smart way, and he looks at just what these players normally do. It's very rare, and I think I don't know if it was Josh Lloyd or someone else who was saying, like, how many players have been in the top 20 in the last 6 years, and it was like 38. It's like, guys are usually around what they did last year. That's normal. Guys jumping around all over the place is not normal. It is not what you should expect. So some guys take leaps, some guys take drop backs, but for the most part, your main guys, your top guys are your top guys.
Yeah, I mean, and Mark does this very specific way. If he breaks the kind of production down per minute, and he kind of pegs you, especially for these players like DeMar who've played a lot of years, he pegs you at kind of a statistical baseline, and then he just figures out how many minutes he thinks you're going to play, and he plugs the numbers, right, and does the math. It seems to work out very well, and they always seem to be maybe I'll say the most accurate projections on the web. I mean, you can
definitely
put them up against anybody, and they always seem to stand the test of time. So
much better than specific sites that will not be mentioned here.
So here's an interesting one, and this is one I'm not on board with. So I took turnovers out of the equation. I did a standard 8 categories.
All right. I know you hate looking at turnovers.
Well, I mean, I just don't. The stickiness of turnovers doesn't stand up from season to season as much as we'd like to think. I think in the sense that some guys get more ball handling, some guys get less ball handling, right? And
sure.
Like, cause some bad bounces can fly either way. So we'll just get rid of that for the sake of today's discussion. So I've got 4 players I want to ask you about, and they're going to be all against DeMar DeRozan.
Oh, okay. I like this.
So DeRozan on the Spurs. You can have him, or you can have Jason Tatum.
Oh, that's a tough one. I like Tatum's kind of other stats a little bit better than DeMar's, but I'm worried about the playing time for Jason Tatum. Even though I think they are going to find ways to play him, I'm going to go with DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so you got Gary Harris or you got DeMar DeRozan?
Ooh, yeah, that's unfair. That's unfair. You know how much I like Gary Harris. I can't do it. I have to go with Gary Harris. I love Gary Harris. He's an elite steals guy. I think he'll keep his status as a top steals guy with great percentages. Like, he's got great guard percentages as well. I love Gary Harris.
So I find the comparison between Jason Tatum and Gary Harris very interesting. I think that they kind of have similar games a little bit, right? Tatum doesn't quite give you the steals, but he gives you another half a block a game, which kind of propels him into interesting territory.
Yeah, that's nice. I think Gary Harris is just he's kind of like a 5-tool guy. He's got those great steals. He hits really good threes, and he gets you really great percentages and scores. Like, that's great across the board. Like, that's the kind of under or overlooked guard. Like, not a lot of people outside the fantasy world like Gary Harris or care for Gary Harris or know who he is.
Okay, so I got another maybe perhaps forgotten man, Gordon Hayward or DeMar DeRozan.
Oh. I think Gordon Hayward was on his way to moving up before that leg injury. I like Gordon Hayward, I think, a little bit more than DeMar DeRozan.
Okay. CJ McCollum or DeMar DeRozan?
Oh, man. I'm a longtime CJ McCollum backer. He did me wrong last year by kind of falling off a little bit. Even though, if you look at his stats, he didn't really fall off at all. It's just that the league got better around him. So I'm going to go with DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah, so all those guys are just ahead of DeMar DeRozan in Mark's rankings. They are 41, 42, 43, 44, and 46.
Interesting.
So I think maybe Mark is sleeping on DeMar DeRozan a little bit.
Maybe just a tad. When you think about like those guys who are in that 40 to 50 range, sometimes they're interchangeable, and perhaps depending on what your build is, you'll like some of these guys a little bit more than the other guy. But I think that was actually a good list: Tatum, Harris, Hayward, McCollum, DeRozan, all a bunch of really good fourth round. Plug him in, does a lot of things. Like really, I have a feeling that's the group of guys we're going to be picking from when we do our Who Do I Draft series later this summer.
Yeah, right. And there's just a lot of interesting names in that list, I think.
I completely agree. Let's talk about the other two players. I actually think one of these players is a little bit more interesting than the two superstars to talk about fantasy wise. It was not a 1-for-1 trade. Jakob Poeltl was probably how you say his name. Tyler did not chastise me immediately. Moved from Toronto to San Francisco, and Toronto ended up getting. I actually thought this was a good move. Ended up getting Danny Green, which really fits a role on their on a needed role on their roster. Danny Green, I think, underrated defensive player. And I really like the idea of Danny Green not playing Popovich minutes in Toronto. And I think his fantasy value goes up after this trade. What do you think about Danny Green's outlook next year?
How did he play the whole season with a torn groin? I'm still trying to figure that out.
Nobody knows.
So Danny Green is a very interesting guy, right? Like, he shoots a terrible field goal percentage.
Yeah.
But never on many attempts, right? Like, it's always you can kind of come back from it.
It's a manageable bad field goal percentage. He's not going to score a lot of points because he doesn't, shoot very many shots.
But he could very well average you a steal and a block and somewhere between 1.5 to 2 threes, right? So you like that.
He's only shooting threes.
But like, there's no assists and there's no rebounds really either. So he's very interesting in that sense, right? Like, he's kind of more of a specialist. And I don't know. I like him in deeper leagues. I find that I often get him, but in standard leagues, he always ends up being kind of one of those guys I churn through it and drop and maybe pick back up, just because at some point you need someone to score, and he just can't do it.
He is not fun to own. You come in, especially when he's on a slump. And he's a very, very streaky player. And those guys are hard to own. Depends on what kind of league you're in. If you're trying to win a week, a slump could kill you. If you're in a roto league, well, that slump is just a slump as part of your overall season-long average, like whatever.
He ranks 145th in Mark's rankings, assuming he only plays 26 minutes. So if you're assuming he gets some more minutes,
I feel like he's going to get some more minutes.
So he might be standard league relevant in your own personal rankings there, Michael.
I think so. I think he is a really good. If you're in a bigger league, I definitely would be picking this guy up in those later rounds. But I think he's a really good, maybe late round flyer if there's just no one with upside, no one intriguing on the board with one of your last 2 rounds.
Now, come on. That's not a real thing. Don't even say that.
Willing to pick him up. Someone's going to be available. Like, you're going to like someone more than Danny Green for sure. But, like, well, he's good at getting a block and a steal. Like, he's just going to be a really good streamer, and I think he might be good enough to own instead of stream.
I'm with you. I'll name you 5 guys below him in Mark's rankings that will make me never pick him in a standard league. Ready?
Okay, go.
De'Aaron Fox.
Okay.
Right, like there's just something interesting there, right? Starting point guard, probably gonna play minutes, could get you 5.5, 6 assists a game.
I am not on De'Aaron Fox Island with. I'm not buying any release date there, but he is more interesting.
Right, as a last round flyer, I'm talking about like in a standard league. I'd much rather have Fox than Danny Green, right? Because we know what Danny Green is.
Yeah.
De'Aaron Fox could be decent, right? Like if we're gonna say one of these 2 guys ends up in the top 100, I'm gonna bet on De'Aaron Fox more than I'm gonna bet on Danny Green.
Yes.
Okay, so there's one. Number 2, Brook Lopez, 155th in Mark's rankings.
Okay, he's only got him playing about 21 minutes, which could drastically change in Milwaukee.
Right, and so like if he's actually ranked below, I'm definitely taking the upside shot on Brook Lopez because we've seen Brook Lopez be really good, right? We've seen it. That's not to say it will happen again, but we've seen it happen in the past.
Okay.
And there's a lot more like kind of interesting guys down in this range. I think Jaylen Brown, right, is a guy we're not sure how much he's gonna play, but I mean he can score, right, and he can do some Danny Green type things.
Yeah, that's true. Bogdan Bogdanovic is a little bit more consistent scorer for Indiana. There are some more interesting fellows down here at the other than Danny Green, who's not that interesting. But I don't know. I think Danny Green's going to be owned on a lot of teams. He's going to be standardly relevant for at least a portion of the season.
But in a deeper league, right, you might want Danny Green because you know what Danny Green's going to get. And some of these players we're talking about, like, would it shock you if Brook Lopez played like 18 minutes a game, right? We've seen him do it to Greg Monroe.
Yeah. It would not shock me, no. Like, and then, high ceiling, low floor, Danny Green's going to be Danny Green. And especially in a deep league, that 1 block, 1 steal game, that adds up over time.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
And so I would be targeting him in those mid rounds in the deep, the big leagues. The other guy in this trade, Jakob Poeltl.
Hurtle.
What? Portal? No, there's no R in there.
Like a cat would do.
There's no R in there.
That's that. Hey, look at Basketball Reference's pronunciation.
Purtle.
It says Purtle.
Jakob Poeltl. Going to San Antonio. Do you think he's going to play any significant minutes there? Do you have any intrigue into Jakob?
Blocks streamer.
That is good. That is good advice.
1.2 blocks in 18.6 minutes a game last year for Toronto. So I think you can get somewhere around there, and he can probably get you somewhere around those block numbers too, and that's worth it. Yeah,
I'd actually think he, probably a few more minutes a game. Pop likes to do weird stuff with the minutes, and occasionally he'll play longer stretches of games than he would in Toronto. So not standard league relevant in my opinion, but Blockstream, I'm with you.
Yeah, so that's probably the book on that one.
I think you're right. So yeah, I think that is it for the Kawhi DeMar trade. That's what we wanted to talk about this evening. I think we'll be back pretty soon with some rookie rankings. But if you want to get a sneak preview to those rookie rankings, check out patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. And you can check out Tyler's rookie ranks right now. I might have some issues with some of the rankings, but Tyler is very well versed. He writes a excellent draft column every year, and he knows the rookies very, very well. Why I only pay attention to the top 8 dudes. I don't care about anybody else.
Fair. That's all fair.
It's a very fair statement. I'll start paying attention to some of these dudes once they become standard league relevant. Or once I see them have one 30-point game in preseason, I'll be like, oh boy, Mikal Bridges, whoop-de-doo.
I think that's the the NFL preseason special?
What is?
The guy runs for like a 70-yard touchdown, and then everyone's like, draft him. All you see on Twitter is like, draft this guy in fantasy. And I'm like, he's literally like not even going to play?
Yeah. A lot of those guys aren't going to play, but I'm looking forward to preseason. Preseason's still a ways away. We are also going to be bringing you, after our rookie ranks, we're going to be doing projections with Mark Roberts, which will be very good, and our team breakdowns. So, very popular segment last year. We broke down every single team last year, and I think we'll be doing that again this year. We're going to try to keep those a little shorter than we did last year. Some of those podcasts got a little tangenty, a little long. Surprise, surprise. And then we're going to be doing some mock drafts, who do I drafts, and sleepers, a bunch of other preseason stuff as we get closer to the actual NBA season starting. Prepare you for your upcoming fantasy season. I'm pretty excited about it, Tyler. Aren't you?
Oh, of course, it's going to be great.
Beautiful. So yeah, we will be back next time with some rookie ranks. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good night. All right, cool. I'll just keep it rolling, and then we'll go into the next one.
All right. Mark Roberts has Isaiah Thomas 92nd.
Feels a little high.
Thought you'd like to know.
I'm going to get a drink of water real quick, and I'll be right back. And then I'll start.
Oh, okay.
What the hell? Can you hear that? Can you hear me right now? Hey, Tyler.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Can you hear that? Can you hear me? Something's wrong with my mic.
I can hear you. I can hear you better than I could hear you before.
Oh, I think my mic was not working earlier.
It was fine though. Like I could still hear
Yeah, that's
you.
probably fine. I think it was using my computer mic instead of my actual microphone. So fucking Christ. All right, whatever. I'll start over. Damn it.
Hello and welcome to another episode. Do it in monotone.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast, hosted by #basketball.com and draft.com, where if you go right now and sign up for draft.com and you use the promo code BOXES, you will get a free entry into your first draft. I am your host, Mike Catron, and joining me as always is my co-host, Tyler Watts. What's up, Tyler?
All right, Mike. Here's a question for you.
Uh-oh.
to kick things off. Okay,
you always have a question right off the top of the bat. Like right off the bat, you always have some question. You're always trying to stump me.
Okay, so now we're gonna talk rookies on this episode, right? And I'm excited.
This is the official rookie ranking, watching the boxes 2018 special edition special.
So I'm going to ask you this question, okay? And it's a two-parter, okay? You can have one first-round pick and one second-round pick. You got to start a franchise from scratch today. Who are you taking?
Ooh, from this draft.
Yep.
Not from any other draft.
Nope, from this draft, from the 2018 NBA draft class.
And you're talking about a fantasy basketball dynasty league.
No, I'm talking about real-life basketball team.
Oh, real-life basketball. That's a whole nother...
You get to start a real-life basketball team. You can have one first-round pick and one second-round pick from this draft. Who are you taking?
Going, Wendell Carter Jr. No. I'm just... using my Bulls bias. I think I gotta go Luka Doncic.
All right, I like it. Right? I like it a lot.
He's pretty much gonna be one of the best players. It feels like. You hope. Like I haven't seen him play against NBA talent, but we have seen him play against like grown ass men in Europe, and he's like one of the best players.
Here's the thing. Here's the funny thing, right? So. These guys all just played in summer league, and some people are getting like super hyped over certain players that I'm sure we'll talk about, right? Like, ooh, this guy dominated summer league. Everyone does realize that the league that Luka Doncic played in is much better than summer league, and he was really good, including like the MVP of the Euro League and his Spanish basketball league.
He was just the MVP of the damn league and won the championship. No big deal.
So like people want to be like, oh, blah blah, he was the third pick, blah this, that. It's like. You realize he's been playing against better competition than all these guys just played against and dominating, correct? Like,
yeah, he's going to be great. He could be a legit superstar. In the second round, I don't know a lot of these dudes. Like I think I've said in a previous podcast, you have a great breakdown of the draft every year, and that's why we're using your rookie rankings, not my rookie rankings, to talk about the rookies on this show. But I have heard some buzz about Mitchell Robinson on the New York Knicks.
And so here, we'll talk about this probably a little bit, right? So I did a mock draft like all the way back, pretty much at the start of the college season. Okay.
That's a little early.
Mitchell Robinson was like my 13th pick in that draft.
Oh.
This was like when the whole thing of him not going to Western Kentucky was starting and all that. Another guy who got picked in the second round that was way up there was DeAnthony Melton.
Yep.
And then you got guys like Akobo, right, who looks like he's going to play some bit for Phoenix. And then you got Keita Bates-Diop, who also was probably arguably, kind of a first-round pick. So it's probably between those four, but I'm with you. It's hard to pass up on Mitchell Robinson. A big guy who's athletic enough to run around a little bit, can block some shots. He looks really good in summer league.
He did look very good. If you were listening for some deep league rookies to be targeting, you just got them. Like you just we appreciate you downloading the podcast, and please just let it play through till the ends and rank and review the podcast. But other than that, you don't have to listen to anything. If you're just looking for deep league guys, don't listen to the rest of the podcast. There they were.
So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited always to talk about rookies because we know a lot about the guys who played forever, like we talked about in the last episode, right? DeMar DeRozan. We pretty much know what DeMar DeRozan is going to do. With these rookies, anything can happen, man. Anything.
Everyone is always excited about rookies, so much so that they're usually overhyped. And I think, this year they're actually going to be, a lot of them are going to be properly hyped because this is a pretty rare, deep draft class where you could see, 4 to 5 guys being standard league relevant when up until the last few years, a rookie being standard league relevant was really unheard of. Like Kevin Durant was barely standard league relevant when he during his rookie season. We have our outliers like Joel Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis. All those guys were standard league relevant. And then last year with Donovan Mitchell, I guess if you're going to call Ben Simmons a rookie, Ben Simmons was up there. There's been an influx of just these like really outstanding rookies. And this is going to be no exception. In fact, this might be one of the biggest standard league relevant rookie classes of all time. There, I said it.
I also say this. So these rankings we're going to talk about they're mostly for a like rookie dynasty draft, right? Like rookie only dynasty draft. And here's the thing that most people maybe don't understand about those drafts, right? Like people always want picks in those drafts. And they're willing to trade an established player for a pick, right? So I got this question the other day, and I'll kind of lay it out to you maybe for a second before I say what I want to say. Somebody asked me, I have Andrew Wiggins, and I want to trade him for a pick in this rookie draft. Okay. What pick should I be targeting? Like what? And basically the question that was a little bit longer, but it evaluated to like what's fair value. Like at what point would you say, no way, I don't want any rookie beyond this point. I'd rather have Andrew Wiggins.
That's a tough one. Wiggins, not panning out that terribly well.
Well, and we saw Wiggins kind of take a step back last year with the new Timberwolves, right?
Yeah, Jimmy Butler, though Jimmy Butler might not be there. So, like, I would usually say...
Wiggins, let's say this about Wiggins first, okay? He's not a great fantasy player. He scores, but, I mean, what else are you really getting from Wiggins? Like,
you're not getting a whole lot.
He doesn't assist, he doesn't steal, he doesn't rebound, he doesn't...
Even with good, like, usage, he's not going to be a good fantasy player. Usually I think I'd say a lot less, but since this draft is so deep, I'd want like a top 10 pick.
Right. And that was my answer, right? If it's anything past the top 10, and we'll squabble maybe a little bit about some of these guys like right outside the top 10.
Sure.
You have no idea what these players are going to be. And it's hard to project the top 10. Anything outside of that top 10, like we'll talk about these guys in a minute, but Michael Porter Jr., right? He just had a second back surgery.
That's not good.
Like, if that guy never amounted to anything, I wouldn't be that surprised. And here's a secret about Michael Porter Jr. He's kind of Andrew Wiggins. He's a scorer and not a lot else.
So you're trading Andrew Wiggins for a broke-ass, literally, Andrew Wiggins.
Yes. And so don't get caught up in like, I'm going to trade this really established player for this rookie pick, right? If you really love somebody, right? Like if you're really high on Luka Doncic and people are going to find out that I am. Okay. If you want to trade Andrew Wiggins for the first pick and pick Luka Doncic, I would do that probably 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. That's an easy choice.
But to trade it for even the guy like Trae Young, like there's a pretty high probability that Trae Young is never really that good of a player. And if he's not getting huge minutes, he's not going to be that good for fantasy.
Yeah, he won't be as good as Wiggins if he's not getting huge minutes this year.
Right.
If you think he's going to get huge minutes, or it looks like he's going to be getting huge minutes, all right, make that trade because, like, you know what Wiggins is going to be, but Trae Young has a little bit of a interesting abilities to get steals and assists. And could amount to something, right? Like he's not going to get a good percentage, but you should know what you're getting with Trae Young. That's better than another year of Andrew Wiggins. But I've seen people trade away, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd pick for people like Bobby Portis. All right, well, Bobby Portis is going to play like 20 minutes and get some scoring and rebounding, and the guys who are like picked 22nd probably aren't going to play at all. Thanks.
Right. And here's the other thing too, like it's so hard for me to make that trade until we're in the actual draft, right? Because there are players I believe in and there are players I'm like, okay, well maybe he could be something. And then there are players where it doesn't matter to me where you guys picked in the real draft, right? I'm looking at you thinking, what do I see? And there are players where I'm just out, right? So, like, especially when we get in that range, right? Like, maybe I don't really feel that great about any of the players. And if I don't really feel that great about any of the players, I kind of just rather stick with the guy who I know is going to at least play some.
I'm completely with you there. The most important statistic in fantasy basketball is minutes per game. So let's go with the number one pick in Tyler's rookie rankings for this season. This is it is, like Tyler said, based on a dynasty outlook. So take that a little bit into account when you're hearing these ranks. But Tyler, who is your number one pick?
So it's Luka Doncic, and it's really not close for me.
That is the correct answer.
So I don't think it's crazy to say that he has potential to be a top 50 player this year. I wouldn't pick him in the top 50 probably, but there's potential there for him to be a top 50 player. The Mavericks have basically already said that he's going to start.
Yep.
And he's basically a wing who is going to handle the ball like a point guard.
I'm 100% with you here on this choice. I agree that I don't think it's close, but I see a world where some of these rookies that we're going to talk about right after Luka Doncic get surprisingly close, right? Like I think if you're making a pick, you pick Luka Doncic 10 out of 10 times. But in overall rankings for next year, I think there's a couple guys who might actually be more than standard league relevant, but in a top 75, top 60 type of player. And if Luka Doncic has kind of like a mediocre start to his career, he could be a top 60 player as well. Like he could fall down into that. But I'm with you. I think he's the only guy who could be a top 50 player. Though, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these other guys get in there. Him not playing in Summer League was the best thing to happen to his draft stock as someone who knows how good he is. I'm a little worried that he's going to have, a couple amazing preseason games, and that's going to completely increase his value to the common fan. But other than that, where are you thinking about drafting this guy?
He's fun to watch. Okay, yeah. He's going to pull some crazy passes out of his behind that you're like, man, I don't know, man. That's impressive. I'll even say this, he was by far the best passer in this draft class.
He's got a Ricky Rubio-esque style to him.
So I'll name you some players in Mark's rankings that are in the general range, right? So he has him ranked 62nd. We're looking just outside the top 50. Okay?
This is Mark Roberts. You can find his projections on #basketball.com, and we will be having Mark Roberts on the show to do a review and get his methodology for these rankings.
Okay, Jamal Murray or Luka Doncic?
Jamal Murray.
Okay, that's 51. Chris Dunn or Luka Doncic?
Oh, Chris Dunn. No, Luka Doncic. No, Chris Dunn. Oh, why would you do this to me? I'm going with Doncic.
Yeah,
Screw you, Chris Dunn.
Me too. Chris Dunn's 53rd. Josh Richardson or Luka Doncic?
Doncic. That's not a question.
Jeff Teague or Luka Doncic? I think Mark's sleeping on Jeff Teague a little bit. I will take him to task on that one.
I'm going to go with Jeff Teague. I think his projections for Jeff Teague last year were not great either, and we bucked the trend on Jeff Teague last year, and we were absolutely right, and I think we're going to be doing the same thing this year.
So, at that point, we kind of get into some guys we talked about in our last episode in that DeMar DeRozan range. I think Doncic is somewhere right around that top 50. I probably wouldn't take him in the top 50. I'd probably be looking at him just outside that top 50.
Yeah, and I'm not sure you're going to have to take him in the top 50 unless, like I said, unless he has a crazy good preseason. I'm not sure you're going to have to reach for him.
But I think
you're going to give him at standard value.
If you're telling me I can have Blake Griffin or Luka Doncic, give me Doncic. Like, Griffin never stays healthy. Like, I just don't want to have that on my team. Like, sure, he's going to be great when he plays, but I just don't want to have that on my team. And just a lot of the guys in this range, like I just like Doncic a little bit better. I'm with you on Jeff Teague, right? If I can have Jeff Teague, I'm going to take Jeff Teague.
Yep.
I'm going to probably take Jamal Murray. But other than that, in this range, I'm kind of really in on Doncic. So I'm going to say somewhere just outside the top 50, 51, 55, 60. If I can take Doncic there, I'd be pretty happy with it.
That's a pretty solid ranking. I like that a lot. He just could be better than we even think. So I think his ceiling is very high as well. Let's go to the number 2 player. So this is when it's gonna. I think Doncic was kind of a given with in fantasy circles that he would be number 1. This is when it starts to get interesting. We are gonna go through quite a few players, and we're gonna. I think you're gonna be surprised how many of these guys might be standard league relevant. Who did you have as your number 2 rookie ranked player?
So this was a real tough decision for me. I went with DeAndre Ayton.
Ooh, okay.
And okay, so here's the thought process, and this is a very important distinction, and okay. I'll just try to explain this the easiest way I can for people. Okay, the rankings for a dynasty rookie draft matter very much about what your team looks like, in my opinion. Okay,
sure.
If I have a contending team where I need something this year, I'm going to be very more apt to pick a player like Elie Kobo, right? Like, okay, well, we get into that range, right? Like, Phoenix is probably going to play him because Phoenix doesn't really have a point guard, and he's a point guard. Or a guy like Mitchell Robinson, right? Like, you could see a path to Mitchell Robinson playing this year with Porzingis out.
Yeah.
There are also there's guys like Zaire Smith, who's on the 76ers, who that dude is very much like just an upside pick.
Okay.
Like, he's a really fun athlete, can jump out of the gym, can do a lot of crazy things. But if he played minutes this year that were more than like 10 to 15 a game, I'd be real surprised. So it very much matters what you're going for. So these rankings are a little bit of a hedge. They're kind of the best of both worlds. It's a mixture of who I think is the best player going forward and who is going to play big minutes next season.
Okay, I think I kind of get where you're going, because after like 3 or 4 years, these rookies will have established value. So these aren't career-long rankings. At some point, these guys just become assets on your team. And so over the next 1 to 3 years, these are the best assets you can get.
And here's why maybe I rate the next year a little bit more, and this is kind of why Ayton went ahead of Jaren Jackson Jr., who's my number 3 on the list. They picked him number 1. I think he's going to play big minutes right away.
I'm with you. I think he is definitely going to play big minutes.
So Jaren Jackson Jr., right, they got Marc Gasol there. They might limit his minutes a little bit early on, and we'll talk about a very interesting point with big men here in 1 second. But so Ayton is going to be a much easier asset to move off of, such that you want to, because he's going to have played big minutes and people are going to have seen him and they're going to be like, oh, well, at least they're committed to playing him a ton, right?
He's the better asset. And he's also probably going to get those counting stats, right? He's going to get points. He's going to get rebounds.
Right.
He's probably going to have pretty decent blocks. And you're going to see him playing a lot while, if Jaren Jackson is scrapping around at like 19, 20 minutes, it's not really sexy at all.
Right, and I think Jaren Jackson will get more minutes than that, but early in the season, I wouldn't be super surprised. So, Mike, name me some of the top centers in the league, just off the top of your head. Just name me a center.
Andre Drummond.
Okay, so how many minutes do you think Andre Drummond played as a rookie?
Probably like 25.
20.7.
That's not a lot.
Name me another rookie. Name me another real good center in the league right now.
Karl Anthony Towns.
Okay, now that one's one of the exceptions, right?
That was one of the. We did talk about those exceptions earlier. I was a little unfair.
You look at guys like Rudy Gobert, right? He played like 9.7 minutes a game his rookie season.
Marc Gasol,
right? Like a lot of these guys, especially big men, center types that we're talking about, do not play a ton as a rookie. Marc Gasol played 30 minutes a game as a rookie.
Oh, really? That is an impressive stat. I did not know that.
But Marc Gasol was also 24 years old as a rookie.
Also true. I think that's a pretty good point. That it takes a while for the big men to get their legs under them at an NBA level, but with DeAndre Ayton, he is going to be playing those starters minutes right away, and that does increase his value. I don't have a problem with ranking him second.
That alone made me say Luka Doncic is far and away the best player, because I think there's a reason most of these guys don't play big minutes, and it's because if they did, they'd struggle. So if we see Ayton struggle quite a bit next year, I wouldn't be super, super surprised.
He doesn't have to fight with Alex Len for minutes, so that's positive.
Tyson Chandler still knocking around, though.
He will have Tyson Chandler. I think that's a good mentor for DeAndre Ayton to learn some of them tricks of the trade of setting dirty screens like Tyson Chandler, big violent screens. So I like that a lot. But I'm okay with you putting DeAndre Ayton number 2. I think that's super fair. He's got all the tools. He is working on a 3-point shot. Like, this guy could be a legitimate perennial all-star in the future. I think a lot of people have Jaren Jackson Jr. Either third or second because of his fantasy tools. So how do you compare these two players when it comes to their fantasy, like their stat line across the board?
So it came down to 3 questions for me.
Sure.
Okay. Who's going to get more minutes next year? I think we answered that one, right? 8.
We did.
Okay. Who has the higher fantasy upside?
There you go.
Okay. Now, this is the one where some people will say it's Jaren Jackson Jr. I'd argue that's not the case.
Okay. And why is that?
Okay. So I don't know what you know about Jaren Jackson Jr.'s offensive game, right? So Mark Roberts ranks Jaren Jackson Jr. 70th, and he ranks DeAndre Ayton 93rd for next season.
Impressive.
And that is with Jaren Jackson Jr. playing 28 minutes and DeAndre Ayton playing 30.
Now, let me just quick segue. You're drafting both of these guys in a standard league.
Yes, but I don't feel good about either one of them.
You wouldn't take a last round flyer.
No, I would
hesitate. I'm saying they are worth drafting in a standard league. 100%. Yes. Okay. I want to make sure we're on the same page there.
I think these two will be overdrafted like we see a lot of rookies.
Certainly.
Okay. Now, here's the thing. Okay, so the big separator is Jaren Jackson is going to be very good at the defensive stats.
Could be maybe better at blocks, and he's also got a 3-point shot as well.
And he's going to be better at steals. Okay. Now, the 3-point shot, I'm going to try to calm people down on.
Okay.
A little bit. And here's why.
He's no Wendell Carter Jr., I'll tell you that.
Well, he never took a ton of attempts in college. So, right? So he averaged 2.7 attempts a game. So he averaged 96 3-pointers over 35 games, which is a lot, right? But he never played a ton, and the reason is he fouled like crazy. He averaged 3.2 fouls a game in college basketball. So I'm worried that he's going to get huge minutes right away in the NBA. If he's got a foul problem in college, like, is that going to get fixed in his rookie season in the NBA?
It often does not, because there's just so many more crafty players, not just the guards like James Harden or anything like that, but all the big men you go up against every single night just feed on dudes with foul problems.
Well, and here's the thing too. He averaged 3 blocks a game, but a lot of it was he tried to block everything.
And that goes away. We saw with Hassan Whiteside, who was trying to block everything and end up blocking like 4 blocks, having 4 blocks a game, which was insane. Yeah, well, that's not good defense, trying to block literally everything. You think it would be, but it leaves you out of position. And once players learn that, their blocks do go down.
Right. So I think if the block numbers are super high, like per minute, he's going to foul out a lot. And that's going to be a problem. The thing that really separates the ceiling parts for me is I think DeAndre Ayton can score 20 points a game. I don't think Jaren Jackson at his best scores more than like 15. He's just not a huge offensive, like, give me the ball and let me do stuff.
I think it's an interesting point. I haven't heard a lot of people say that DeAndre's ceiling actually might be higher than Jaren Jackson Jr. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, because I think Ayton can develop a little bit outside shooting. I don't think he's going to be like huge 3-point maker, but he can do it. He's a really good athlete. He's going to be a good rebounder. Okay, they're both going to be good rebounders. He's going to be able to block some shots, not near as many as Jaren Jackson Jr., but Jaren Jackson Jr. also probably isn't going to block shots at the rate he did in college. And Ayton is a much bigger scorer. He's got post moves. They're going to feed him the ball. I think that the points really what ends up separating these two. And that category definitely goes to Ayton. So I'm actually thinking Ayton has a higher fantasy ceiling, not by a ton, but a little bit.
I like that perspective. I think you make a compelling case that Ayton actually has a higher ceiling. I think there might be a handful of years where Jaren Jackson Jr. Finishes the year a little bit higher than DeAndre, but I think you make a compelling point that like he's gonna have he could eventually have 20 points a game. He's gonna have elite rebounds. His blocks will be reasonable. His 3-pointers could be reasonable, and that's probably gets you over the hump of someone who's getting extra blocks, maybe a little bit more steals and hitting more threes, but just not cutting it when it comes to points and rebounds. So I like that take. I think it's a pretty good one. And so you got Ayton at 2.
Okay, so
Jaren Jackson at 3.
And here's the third question that kind of separated them, and then I want to get to this.
Okay, go ahead.
And that is, what is the worst case scenario for both players, right? Like, and I think that if you're talking floor, I think Jaren Jackson Jr.'s floor is a little bit higher because I think he's going to play because he's such a good rim protector, right? Like, we've seen big men fizzle out, even big men that are super talented like DeAndre Ayton. But the chance of either one of them like completely fizzling out doesn't seem high at all to me. Right? Like, they're both going to play some. And so that alone, right? So the higher upside, the floor is relatively similar, I think. And then the fact that I think Ayton's going to play more this season, that kind of swayed the vote.
Yeah, you think he's going to play a little bit more. You actually think his ceiling's maybe even a little higher, and their floors are pretty similar.
Yeah. So
let me challenge you on something then, because I know who you have ranked number 4. It is the future Hall of Famer Wendell Carter Jr., the best junior in this draft. I want to use your logic on Wendell Carter Jr. against Jaren Jackson Jr. Who's gonna have the better year next year? Who's gonna have the most playing time next year? I think it's kind of a toss-up. I think they're both in similar situations. Wendell Carter Jr. playing behind Robin Lopez versus Marcus Sol. I think one team is going to be a little bit more willing to put the rookie in than Jaren Jackson.
Yeah, but couldn't you? I mean, like, who's going to play power forward for Memphis? Like, Jaren Jackson played power forward most of the time at Michigan State.
Let's call it a toss-up.
Okay, so they both should play.
You're right.
Who will play? Plus, it's Chicago we're talking about. Like,
no, I don't need that slander up in my podcast, bro. I don't need you slandering Chicago at the beginning of the season. You can slander Chicago after the first week of the season when they're making really terrible moves.
I don't want to trust Fred Hoiberg. Okay,
that is an issue. So never mind. That was a pretty good point to
like he's in the category with Dave Yeager in Sacramento for me. Like, Dave Yeager will play Zach Randolph 30 minutes for like the first 2 months of the season. He'll play over Marvin Bagley. He'll play Zach Randolph at power forward. And Zach Randolph should never play power forward anymore. He'll play him 30 minutes and he'll play Marvin Bagley like 18.
Yeah, that's dumb, and we'll get to Bagley here in a second. But I want to use your criteria.
Okay, yeah, I'm in.
Wendell Carter Jr. ceiling. Who's got the higher ceiling, him or Jaren Jackson Jr. across the board fantasy-wise?
Okay, so fantasy ceiling. Okay, so how many points can Wendell Carter score? Like, what is Wendell Carter's point ceiling?
14?
Yeah. And I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is probably like in that 15 range.
Maybe a little higher. Maybe a little higher. I feel like their blocks are I think Jaren Jackson probably edges out Wendell Carter, though I think Wendell Carter does have a pretty impressive block game.
I think Wendell Carter is probably a little worse in the blocks. I think you're right about that.
So, I think it's not a whole lot. I think he's better at steals. I think he's better at threes.
He's a little better passer.
He's definitely a better passer.
And the rebounds.
What about those percentages?
I don't know, man. That's always hard to say for young players, right? Like,
you're right. This is not an easy comparison. But let's just say who do you got having the better ceiling? Because you know who I got having the better ceiling, but I'm biased.
I'll go Jaren Jackson Jr. there. I think this was another difficult debate for me. I thought Wendell Carter looked really good in Summer League.
He was probably the best looking guy in Summer League, the best rookie in Summer League.
Here was the hard part, and then I think you and I talked about this once before, maybe. Him and Bagley playing together kind of took away from both of them.
Yes.
Right? Like when you watch Duke, right? Marvin Bagley and Wendell Carter Jr. played together at Duke, for anyone who doesn't know. And, right, like, you saw, like, some games one guy would do a lot of the things you wanted to see, but the other guy would kind of be pushed to the side and then vice versa. We also didn't get to see Wendell Carter, like, be the man as far as, like, a front court player scoring-wise because Marvin Bagley did that a lot more than him. So Wendell Carter Jr. was a pleasant surprise for me in Summer League.
He was a very pleasant surprise for me, and we did do a Summer League podcast, so if you want to go check that out, we mostly talked about second-year players, and so we will mention how some of these guys played in Summer League, and Wendell Carter Jr., definitely the standout of Summer League.
So it was a much more difficult decision for me, Ayton against Jackson, than it was Jackson Jr. against Carter. Like, Carter was a pretty firm number 4 for me after Summer League.
I want to challenge you on your third point, though. Who's got the lowest floor? And I think the question is, or the answer to that is, I don't know how you're going to argue that Jackson doesn't have the lower floor because of some of the stuff you just mentioned about his ability to stay on the court, while Wendell Carter Jr. has been compared to a guy like Al Horford who has had a long, steady career.
Oh, I'm with you there. I wouldn't be surprised if Wendell Carter played more minutes than Jaren Jackson Jr. this season when the final numbers are tallied up.
Yeah. Which if it's significant, that means he's going to have a better season. He has a higher floor. I'm just saying, like, I think these guys are a little bit more closer than you have them out to be. In my rankings, I obviously have Wendell Carter over Jaren Jackson.
The floor is for next season. Yeah, but see, like, couldn't you just see? And this is the kind of the floor question, especially for next season, that got me was like I could just see Fred Hoiberg like playing Robin Lopez like 28 minutes.
I don't at all. I really don't, and because I think Wendell Carter Jr. is one of those guys who can spread the floor, which is exactly what Hoiberg wants.
You're giving Hoiberg credit for being a coach who knows what he's doing, though.
Well, there's that. He has been dealt a pretty terrible hand every single year. Also, I don't think he's a very good coach. I think he's gotten better, but he's not a very good coach.
Here's the point I wanted to make after pick 4. Okay? So
okay.
we
make this point. We've done Doncic, Ayton, Jackson Jr., Carter Jr.
I feel good about all these guys sticking in the NBA.
Are they all standard league relevant next year? I think the answer is yes.
Standard league relevant? Yes. Will I pick most of them? That's probably the answer to that question. Is probably no. But yeah, standard.
Would you say Carter Jr. is not draftable? I think he's draftable. I'd rather take a flyer on him.
Today, he's draftable.
Okay, so all 4 of those guys draftable next year, relevant next year.
Potentially, though, by the time we get to draft night for most of our leagues, I could see some of those guys not really being draftable. Like, if we're pretty certain some some of them are playing like 15 minutes a game, especially to start the year. Like, are you really going to hold a guy in a standard league who's playing 15 minutes a game? Like, that doesn't seem like wise business.
No, I agree with you there.
But my point after pick 4 is I could see any of these players, save like 2, being a bust.
I don't think I can see any of these guys being a full bust.
No. I'm talking about after this pick. Like, after the top 4. I could see every player that we're going to talk about.
From here on out in the podcast, every player, they could all be busts.
Yeah, like there's a...
Except for 2 of them.
There's a 5% chance or more, 10% chance or more.
All right, I'm gonna guess which ones you don't think are busts, but when we get to them. So let's talk about who you have ranked 5th. Who is your 5th ranked player?
So it's Trae Young. And okay. I think Trae Young is always going to be a better fantasy player than real life player.
Definitely.
Okay.
He's definitely going to shoot a lot, which teams in real life don't like if you're not actually scoring, but fantasy wise, you can punt your field goal and it doesn't really matter.
And I think he's always going to be a good assist guy. He's a good passer. The dude's a good passer.
So yeah, there was a lot of buzz around Summer League about him just kind of really having, and he had a terrible start to Summer League. But one of the things he was, and we've talked about this in our Summer League podcast, if you're good in Summer League, all right, that's good. And if you're bad in Summer League, that's a pretty bad sign. And I think a lot of people jump on that bandwagon. And I think Trae Young's draft stock went way down after Summer League. And I think it went too far down because Trae Young still was able to put up good assist numbers and pretty decent steal numbers, even though the ball wasn't going in.
Yeah, and that's kind of another spot where his fantasy and real life value diverge, right? Like, he's not a good defender, but he's, for the games we've seen, right, at Oklahoma and in the Summer League, he's been good at stealing the ball.
Yeah, he's been pretty decent. He plays those passing lanes and takes too many risks, and coaches hate that, but right. I don't care.
I mean, he's going to be the starting point guard for the Hawks next year, which makes him standard league relevant.
Which is quite shocking, It's Dennis Schroeder.
Well, I told you this right on the podcast last week, was it? That, like, if you go to Atlanta, his face is plastered everywhere, man.
Like, he's the second coming of Atlanta,
like, there's billboards and those little, like, flag pennant things, like, up all outside the arena with his face on them. Like, they think
they're all in. They're all in on Trae Young.
Right. So, but I could see in a few years, right, like, on a team that competes, his defense could be hard to stomach. Like, they're going to need a Patrick Beverly or a Klay Thompson to play beside this guy to defend.
Yeah, even then, you're also going to need a Rudy Gobert. Like, you're going to need a lot to deal with how terrible of a defender Trae Young is going to be.
Right, and so at some point, right, like, if he's that bad of a defender, he could get marginalized into, like, a sixth man type just because they can't stomach his defense for 35 minutes a game.
But he is going to get the minutes. So Trae Young, draftable next year.
Okay, so I got some point guards, and I want to ask you who you'd rather have next year.
All right.
Alfred Payton. Rajon Rondo.
Oh, boy. Trae Young.
Isaiah Thomas.
Trae Young.
Reggie Jackson.
Trae Young.
All right, so, I mean, you got Reggie Jackson, or you got Trae Young probably in your top 100.
It sounds like it. What about DeAndre Fox?
De'Aaron Fox? Ooh.
De'Aaron Fox. I always get that name wrong.
Yeah, I think I'll take Trae Young there. Just because I think they're kind of similar players, but Trae Young's going to get you more assists probably.
Where I was going, it's like, it feels like Trae Young could be a De'Aaron Fox situation, but it just feels like Trae Young every once in a while is going to go off on scoring.
Yeah, and you said it, you mentioned it, but the field goal percentage is going to be bad, folks. Like, if he shoots 40, I'll be surprised. Like, that would be surprising.
If he shoots 40, he's definitely a top 100 player.
Right, but I wouldn't count on it. if you want me to project right now, I'm guessing like 38%.
Dennis Smith Jr.?
Now, see, that's an interesting one because how much is he going to handle the ball and how much is Luka Doncic? Like
that is interesting.
So
I think the system allows them to both have the ball.
I kind of think that they're similar players too. I'm kind of in on Dennis Smith though, in the sense that I think Dennis Smith might score a little bit more.
So if you're in on Dennis Smith, then I think you're in on Trae Young, which obviously you are because you just been talking him up as your number 5 pick. So fantasy relevant for sure. Draftable, it sounds like yes.
So if you're in a redraft league, I might take Trae Young over some of these big men, just in the sense that I think he's going to play so much more.
Yeah, he's going to get those minutes. So like Wendell Carter might play 22 minutes. He might play less than Bobby Portis. That would be a freaking tragedy if he played less than Bobby Portis, but could happen. It's possible. Trae Young, got to start.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where, right, we talked about this a minute ago. Like, if I'm a contending team and for whatever reason, like, I made a trade and I have the 4th pick, I might pick Trae Young. Because I'm going to get production from Trae Young next year.
Yeah, you're going to get some stats. And you're going to get some assists. Assists are hard to come by.
Right, so
you're just going to have to deal with that shooting percentage.
Right, and it's going to
quite a bit of turnovers.
And yeah, if you're in a turnover league, right, you might dock Trae Young.
Rookies often turn the ball over quite a bit.
And here's the thing about his shooting percentage too. It's going to be on big volume. Like, he's a shooter, man. He's a volume shooter. Like, you're not going to be able to hide it like you can with some other players because they take like 5 attempts a game or 8 like a Danny Green type. Like, this guy's going to shoot a lot. Mark Roberts has him down for shooting 11.6 attempts a game.
Make that more.
Yeah, and I'm right. He's going to shoot, so that field goal percentage is going to be a tough stomach.
Yeah, crank that up. All right, so Trae Young at number 5. We're still in standard league relevant for next year territory, which is pretty rare at this point. In not super rare, but rare enough in a draft for rookies. Who do you have at number 6?
So it's Mo Bamba.
President Mo Bamba.
So I really like the
Orlando Magic.
I really like Bamba's defensive game.
I just like saying his name.
He's gonna rebound. He's gonna block shots. He's probably gonna average somewhere close to a steal a game if he can get, especially if he can get 30. If he can get 30 minutes, he probably gets a steal a game.
So there's a world where that team, Orlando's, for the very first time since Dwight Howard was there, which is weird to say as well that it was a fun team to watch then. I don't know if it was. But this team could be really, really fun to watch with President Mo Bamba and Jonathan Isaac and Aaron Gordon all playing at the same time. It's just a giant amount of length. Like Mo Bamba and Jonathan Isaac blocked a shot at the same time during Summer League, and people were like, "Oh, damn! Like this could be a hard team to score on with all that length." But Mo Bamba is buried behind a glut of centers on Orlando. So how do you feel about his playing time for next year?
So I think you're well aware that I think Vooch is a very underrated player.
We both love Vooch fantasy-wise.
And so I don't see Bamba playing a ton.
They did move my old favorite name to say, Bismack Biyombo. He's no longer on the team, so there are minutes for Mo Bamba.
But I mean, they got Gordon, who should be playing the 4, right? They got Jonathan Isaac, who should be playing the 4 and the 5, right? So like, you can't see him playing Vooch and Bamba that much together.
No,
like, this is kind of just a clustered situation, like a lot more than you want to see for a top rookie. But I think Bamba's going to be good when he gets on the court at certain things. And, I mean, case in point, right, he ranks 101st in Mark's rankings in 26 minutes a game.
And that's because of aggressive block and rebound numbers. So would you compare Mo Bamba's like initial potential? So like I think maybe over time he becomes a little bit better scorer. He's even flirting with the 3-point shot. Like he's got a really high ceiling in regular NBA in the long term. I think fantasy wise, his ceiling is lower than some of those guys who are already getting steals and hitting threes. Like they already got that built into their game. Would you compare his like short-term game to that time that Bismack Biyombo went off in Toronto?
In some ways, yeah. Okay. So he's a guy I wouldn't pick in a standard league, in a standard redraft league, because I think he may very well get the big center man treatment we were talking about earlier, right? Where like Rudy Gobert plays like 10 minutes a game. He's very thin. He's very tall. He has the longest wingspan in the NBA the moment he steps
all time
on the NBA court, right? Yeah, 7'10". I don't really like him for next year, but I think he's really intriguing long term. He's a really good rim protector. He's going to rebound the ball. He can score a little bit. He can shoot a little bit. I like the game. I like the fantasy game. I don't like it for next year.
Yeah, unless they do something with Vooch.
Yeah, but they've been trying to trade Vooch since like I was born. Since they got Vooch, they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna trade you," and then they're like, "No."
It does feel like Vooch has been in the league for 15 years, which is he's probably like 26 or something.
He's very young still.
He's incredibly young, so someone should make a play on that. But Vooch is definitely one of our fantasy darlings. We always end up picking him up because he's always underrated.
And I think he's going to be even more underrated now because people are going to be like, definitely. They got Mo Bamba, man. And I'm going to
start Mo Bamba, and they're not going to start Mo Bamba.
I'm going to be like, all right, well, you enjoy your 10 minutes of Mo Bamba while I enjoy my 30 minutes of Vooch.
There is a world where they both play like 20. Maybe Vooch plays 29 and Mo Bamba plays 23 or 4 or something like that. There's a world where that happens.
Well, and we got to say this too, right? Like, are they a contending team? Like, they don't have a guard. They have a guard on the Magic.
Nope. They are not a contending team.
So, like, sometimes you just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, right?
Yeah, there could be a time period later in the season where Mo Bamba is playing like 33 minutes a game.
Right. And whether that's they shut down Vooch or they're just like, oh, we're going to see if Vooch can be a power forward and Mo Bamba can be the center or whatever. Like,
that'd be fun. I'd like to watch that.
Right, like crazy stuff happens. But
it will get interesting. So you're thinking Mo Bamba not draftable in a standard league.
I'm thinking he plays like 18 minutes a game.
But I'm going to say he is standard league relevant. He is someone to keep an eye on. He is someone to stream.
Watch list player. I'm with you there.
He is definitely relevant in a standard league. So we're still in relevant territory. So let's go to number 7. We're already down to number 7. Who do you got at number 7?
Oh, it's Kevin Knox, right? Who stood out in summer league a little bit.
Yes, another behind Wendell Carter Jr., who's one of the best summer league players of all time and future Hall of Famer. But yeah, Kevin Knox also had a pretty good summer league, and the Knicks really need someone who can play basketball.
Well, and so some people are worried that Kevin Knox, right? Like he even showed this a little bit during summer league. He's very much a volume scorer, right? Like he takes a lot of shots to get to where he needs to be, points wise, and he didn't do a ton of stealing and blocking in college, which is a little bit of a worry for fantasy, right? Like if you don't steal and you don't block shots, like it's hard to be super fantasy relevant. The thing I'll say about that is Kentucky players, like, we always, especially when they're as skilled as a guy like Kevin Knox or, I don't know, Devin Booker or Jamal Murray. Or like, we always seem to see so much more from them in the NBA.
Yeah, they're playing in that system, and they get out of that and they actually start playing like NBA type team basketball, and they just look better. So
here's what maybe I'll say about this for fantasy purposes. Right? I think Kevin Knox is an NBA player for sure. I think he's going to get minutes for the Knicks, but in a normal year, he probably wouldn't be my number 7 player. Like, I don't feel super good about his fantasy game.
You feel good about his playing time.
Yes,
You
I
feel
feel
good about his ability to be standardly relevant. He could have an interesting ceiling in the long term.
And he's only 18 years old, right?
Yeah.
Like he's like the youngest guy that we're going to talk about today.
But there is a world where Kevin Knox is not relevant come December.
Yes, and there's a world where Kevin Knox is like
Kevin a must-own in December.
Yeah, and Kevin Knox's fantasy ceiling though, like some of these guys we talked about, right? Like their fantasy ceiling is like way up there. Like Luka Doncic, his fantasy ceiling is probably a top 20 player.
Definitely. Some of the Wendell Carter, Jaren Jackson, if those guys put it all together, they're in the top 30.
Yeah, top 20, top 30, top 40. Like a lot of the guys we talked about. Kevin Knox, like, isn't his ceiling probably like somewhere kind of around the top 50? Like I don't think he's ever really going to be a super big steals guy. I don't think he's ever really going to block that many shots.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's ever going to do enough. Like, is he kind of like, I don't know, like, is Tobias Harris? Like, that's a little generous even.
Yeah, right. And so maybe he grows into a player like that. But like even Tobias Harris, right? He's like a top 50 guy.
Yeah,
like,
Tobias Harris gets good steals. Like Tobias Harris is a really good fantasy player.
So this is kind of where this draft goes a little haywire, in my opinion, right? Like there's some guys we're going to talk about here who like you feel real good about him being an NBA player, but like is he going to be a great fantasy player? Like I don't know. And then there's other guys, right? Like, ooh, this guy could be an awesome fantasy player, or he could literally never get minutes ever in the NBA. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. This is a weird draft. That the fact that we're at number 7 and we're just having this conversation right now, where we start talking about guys, actual like, do they have enough in them to be fantasy relevant, or are they never going to play? Like usually that happens very quickly in the draft. Number 7, we're still talking about that, and we're actually going to still talk about that over the next like 4 or 5 more picks.
Yeah, and so. There's some guys who've been picked really high who we haven't mentioned yet. And so if you really wanted to take that type of player, like right here, I wouldn't have anything against you.
Sure. Like Marvin, you still haven't mentioned Marvin Bagley, who's the number 2 pick in the draft. And he's also not even next. So who do you have at number 8?
So number 8 is Mikal Bridges, right? He went to Phoenix. He was actually drafted by Philly, and then there was the trade. So he went to Phoenix.
Yep.
He feels really safe in the sense that he's going to play minutes.
And I think that was his MO going into the draft, is that he was a 3-and-D safe pick, which time and time again people don't make, and then they're like, man, I wish I had a 3-and-D wing.
Yeah.
The most important role in all the NBA. So like he's incredibly safe. I think he'll have a long NBA career. But this is when we start talking about like, okay, cool. He's a decent enough player to play in the NBA. He's probably going to play pretty good minutes. I don't know. Phoenix is a little weird right now, but is he good at fantasy?
I think he's going to be a decent steals and blocks guy. I don't think he's ever going to score like a ton of points. Like he probably maxes out at like 12 a game, maybe 13 or 14. Like if he really could get up there. He's going to do a little bit, though. Like, he's going to be able to get 2 assists, probably, if he plays 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more. He's going to get you 4 or 5 rebounds. Like, he's going to be one of those guys who just does a little bit of everything. But
I like that. Those guys are usually underrated.
But he's another guy. Like, the fantasy ceiling is, like, maybe 50. Like, maybe
like a good fantasy player. Like, oh, yeah, that guy's good.
And that's the ceiling, right? Like, that's important to remember. Like, his best case scenario is probably like number 50.
Like, is he like a better Trevor Ariza?
Well, I don't know that he's a better. Right? We've seen some really good season from Trevor Ariza. His ceiling is probably something in the neighborhood of Trevor Ariza, maybe a little bit better. Yeah,
that's what I'm kind of feeling when I look at his stats. Like when I look at what his stats potentially, what he's good at is like. Well, that's what Trevor Ariza was good at, except for Trevor Ariza shot really poorly.
Well, and here's the thing, too, right? Like, Trevor Ariza, them signing Trevor Ariza could be really good for him.
Yeah,
right. Like
he could just
it could be bad for
model
his
his
minutes.
game after Trevor Ariza.
Right, bad for his minutes this year, but like if Trevor Ariza helps him improve and be a good NBA defender, like that's really good for Bridges. So
Absolutely. Would you consider him draftable next year?
in a standard league, probably not, just because he might have been had they not signed Trevor Ariza. Right, but you got to figure they're going to chop those minutes at that kind of 4 spot, and he's not going to play over Devin Booker at the 2. Right, no. So I mean, potentially they could play Devin Booker as the point guard and play both those guys, but is that like
the Trevor Ariza trade makes him, I feel, not draftable. And I think we kind of cut it there at the Mo Bamba at the number 6. So we had Doncic number 1, Ayton number 2, Jackson Jr. number 3, Wendell Carter number 4, Trae Young number 5, Mo Bamba number 6. That's when we started saying, I'm not sure if he's draftable. Maybe, but the minutes might not be there. But he's relevant. Kevin Knox at number 7, relevant. Mikal Bridges at number 8, relevant.
Right. And there's a lot of water to go under the bridge too, right? Like we see it every time before like even training camp kicks off, right? Like one year it was Chris Middleton, right? Chris Middleton's out for the season. Well, you know, that changes people's value a lot. And so like if Trevor Ariza is the guy who goes down this year, then Bridges
there you go.
It's interesting. But with him in the way, like it just kind of seems like a crunch. I mean, it's crunch there a little bit.
I like Mikal Bridges. I think I actually do think he's going to be pretty good. I think he's going to be a little underrated, but not worth drafting in a standard league. Let's keep going. We got number 9.
Yeah, Kentucky point guard.
Who do you got?
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who this is one of the crazy guys, right? Like he was not even really on anyone's radar. Like he was kind of a lower tier recruit to Kentucky, and everyone expected him to kind of play a small bench role for them, and then like he morphed into their starter. And
now he's out in LA starting for the Clippers.
Right. And so this is another guy who there's kind of a logjam there, right? They got Milos Teodosic, they got Patrick Beverley, they got Avery Bradley, who they just re-signed. Like there's a lot of mouths to feed in that kind of guard rotation.
At least they don't have Austin Rivers anymore. Ugh.
But you like this guy, right? He's long. He's got real long arms. He's got a good wingspan. He looks like a good defender.
He's a super interesting NBA player. Fantasy-wise, though, I don't know how interested I am in him at all.
See, now, this is a guy who could get a lot of steals. If he's going to be a point guard, right? Like, you got to figure that he's going to get decent assist numbers. Like,
it's hard to pass up a starting point guard in the NBA.
Right, especially one with his kind of steal upside. Like if he's playing 30 minutes a game, or you know what I mean, like or 32 minutes a game, like that could be like a steal and a half a game.
That's true. I do think there's a limit though. Like if he's just not a good shooter, there's definitely a limit to his ceiling.
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking about drafting players like De'Aaron Fox and Trae Young and Dennis Smith Jr. Like. Sure, those guys might score a little bit more than him, but he's going to steal. He's going to be significantly better in steals, probably.
Interesting. So, I mean,
given that they all play the same amount of minutes, no.
Yeah, given you think there's less chance that Gilgeous-Alexander actually plays 30 minutes, while Trae Young's definitely going to play 30 minutes.
Yeah, until for next season, like if you're saying you got to pick one of these 2 players, like it's not a contest.
If they're both going to play 30 minutes a game, I can guarantee you that. Who are you taking?
You can I'm going to take Trae just because his assist numbers are going to be enough better that I still want him. Plus, I think he's got a little bit of steal upside. But this guy being a steal and a half a game guy, like Gilgeous-Alexander being a steal and a half a game guy, is not out of the question for me.
Wow. So, I mean, we're talking like he can move into that elite steal range.
Yeah. Now,
and if he's carrying the ball a lot, he's playing a lot of minutes, those assists go up, the points go up, counting stats go up. And suddenly you're talking about a guy who is not just standard league relevant, which I think we are getting, we're saying he should at least be watched at this point, but he might be someone who you own at some point in the season.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean, we saw they got Lou Williams too. That's not who I forgot.
Yeah, I forgot about Lou Williams too, and he's gonna play a lot.
Right. And so if he gets like 20 minutes a game for the season,
No.
That'll be good for him, right? Like that'll be like, yeah, he did good. Johnny did good.
Yeah.
But it's hard to see that. But then again, like how many injuries did the Clippers have last year, right? Like Patrick Beverley never played. Theodosic was in and out of the lineup. Like all those guys that we named were hurt at some point or another. So,
and like you're saying, he has the potential to be a pretty good NBA player. So he starts playing, maybe plays 20 minutes a game for the first few months. And it's like, oh no, this kid's really good. Like he's much better than we thought he was. That's a potential. And I think we've said that literally about every one of these players. They could get in the game and be better than we thought they were, and then start playing more and become standard league ownable. And we're at pick number 9. Like all of these guys have the potential to happen next year, and that's really rare.
Right. Now, for this particular player, he might even not even quite make my watch list, especially if he's behind all those other guards. To start if I draft the week before the season and he's like basically out of the rotation, like he's probably not even on my watch list because you just don't really feel good about them just going, okay, well now you're going to play 30 minutes a game. But he's a guy I think is really interesting in the long run.
Yeah, I see what you're saying here. It's like you may be given a little bit of a bump because of his long-term potential.
Here's the thing I'll say about the rest of the guys. Looking over the list, there's not a sure bet in the board. There's a lot of guys who are interesting left here at this point, but like the safety ended kind of with Mikal Bridges. Like I was gonna say,
I was gonna guess Mikal Bridges is one of your. He's gonna be good. I actually thought Zaire Smith would be your other one, but we are not down that far yet.
So, and I'll talk a little bit about Zaire Smith and what I think about him.
Who do you got at number 10? I think this is the most shocking ranking of your list.
So it's Marvin Bagley.
The third.
So he went to the Kings at pick 2.
And his summer league, he looked weak. He just did not look good.
So I'm interested to see what you thought about Marvin Bagley, right? Like he's a name, right? He's the guy who gets a lot of pub.
Yeah.
And he's been, right? Like it was, he's the leading scorer of Duke, this, that, the other thing. So I'm interested to see what you think about Marvin Bagley and his prospects. And then I'll kind of give my spiel on what I think about him.
So him going to Sacramento, I think, is the worst case scenario for him as a human being, but the best case scenario for people looking to draft him in fantasy. Unless there is the Zach Randolph situation as there was last year, which is totally possible. I think he's going to play 30 minutes a game.
Okay, so
by the end of the season, maybe not to start the season, but I do think he's going to play 30 minutes a game, and he is a type of guy, I think, who can, on some nights, fill up the sexy stats, the points and the rebounds.
Okay, so you brought up 2 very good points there, and these are 2 things I really want to hit on. So I'll take over for a second here.
Go ahead.
So now, obviously, this could change, right? Because no coach sticks to anything super hard and fast. But in the past, we've seen Dave Yeager always be a coach that says, you rookie will not start opening night. You will play a small bench role, and you have to basically earn your minutes. He's done it with everybody he's had.
Basically ever.
Yeah. Okay. As anyone he's ever had in his time as head coach. Okay. He did it with De'Aaron Fox. He even did it with Bogdan Bogdanovic last year. Right? Bogdan Bogdanovic.
Which didn't make any sense because he's actually good and not a traditional rookie.
And 25 years old, right? He's an experienced professional in Europe. He did it with Buddy Hield. He did it with Skal Labissiere. He did it with Willie Cauley-Stein. Name a Kings young man. He's done it his whole time with the Kings.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
So to say he's standard league relevant next year is difficult for me. There may be a point
you have to think he will be at some point.
Yeah, there'll probably be a point in the season
once they fire Dave Yeager.
But to draft them, like if you said you have to draft a rookie starting, at this point down, I wouldn't pick him. I just wouldn't. I'd pick Colin Sexton for next year if we're like doing a draft.
Well, let me get to the point about his counting stats. It's like,
okay,
those are sexy stats, right? Those are not the stats that win you fantasy basketball leagues.
Here was my question, and this is, I think, relevant on two fronts because this guy actually plays for the Kings. Is Marvin Bagley ever better than the best version of Zach Randolph we saw?
Maybe if he develops a 3-point shot.
Yeah, but is he going to develop enough 3-pointers for that to matter? Like,
I mean, if he develops one per game, it's technically better.
Yeah, but is it by comparison to the rest of the league?
No.
You know what I mean? Like one
3-pointer is like having 0. No.
Right, that doesn't move the needle like it did when Zach Randolph was actually good, right?
I mean, one's better than nothing, right? But I see what you're saying.
Right, like he's Zach Randolph in some ways. Like I don't think he's going to shoot a great field goal percentage. He's a high flyer, like he's a real good athlete. He's a better athlete than Zach Randolph, but he's going to get you points and rebounds, and he's not going to steal or block or assist.
Yeah, his assists, he's not really known for that. Like his free throw percentage is bad.
Right, which makes me think, like, is he really going to be a good 3-point shooter? Like he can't really hit his free throws. So sure, he shot really well on limited attempts last year at Duke, but is that really going to stand up? Like I'm not so sure.
Went and talked to.
Plus, did you notice at Summer League, like they didn't really let him shoot from outside? Like they let Harry Giles shoot a couple threes, but like did Bagley even?
Harry Giles is a champion. That guy is gonna be great. Love Harry Giles, but no, I don't really recall. I mean, I didn't watch a lot of the Sacramento Summer League, but I watched enough to not see Marvin Bagley shooting any threes.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I just don't feel good about this guy. Like.
He looked weak when I saw him play, and the highlights I saw, like he just looked like he was getting outgunned by literally everybody. Just like it looked like people were kind of manhandling him. It just didn't look like he could handle himself in the post.
And so we go back to my 3 questions, right? Like I don't know that I feel good about any of them.
Yeah, no good minutes. Ceiling is real questionable, especially fantasy wise, and the floor is like not great. Like it's his floor is probably higher than a lot of people, or his floor is probably a little higher than some of the people we already talked about, but his probability of reaching his ceiling is less.
I made some Kings fans mad maybe in one of my last days covering the Kings when I said, is Marvin Bagley Scalabissiere?
I think Scalabissiere might be better than Marvin Bagley.
Right? And like Kings fans like kind of have that love-hate relationship with Scalabissiere because he never plays, but like didn't you just draft a new Scalabissiere? Like
it's certainly possible.
His post moves are better, right? Like he's better player in the post than Scalabissiere, but
I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that the second overall pick, Marvin Bagley, is not draftable in a standard league. And you're even going so far to say maybe not standard league relevant next year. There is a world where Marvin Bagley is not standard league relevant. I think you have to keep an eye on him. You have to ensure that if he is playing 32 minutes a game and getting Zach Randolph numbers, that he's owned. Like he should be owned if he's playing 32 minutes a game.
Can you really see him taking over the game as a rookie and scoring the kind of points he needs to score to like?
I don't know what else is going on in that team.
If we talk about percentage chances, though, like
it's low.
To me, that's like maybe 1%. Like just from what I saw in Summer League, and obviously like he can improve his game and work and get better, but like he just didn't seem like that type of guy who's gonna get his. Like say what you want about Zach Randolph, he's always been a guy who got his, right? Like he gets the ball, he don't even look to pass sometimes. It's just like Zebo's gonna shoot this.
That's for sure. And my claim to fame is I was there in the building in Memphis for Zebo's one and only triple-double.
You know what I mean?
It's
And
still
so
one of my favorite basketball memories.
I just didn't see that from Bagley. You saw it a little bit at Duke, right? That I'm going to get mine, but like in summer league against other professional players, like we didn't see the hey.
I'd like to see more of Bagley before I write him off as a nobody. I just like to see more of him. I'm starting to open the book to write him off, but I'm not willing to write him off yet. I think he's standard league relevant. I think you want to keep an eye on him. I think someone who could be 20-10, which is possible, should be owned if he is playing that much and he is getting those numbers, and it is possible he could do that. Am I excited about him at all? No, I'm not. I'm semi-excited about literally everybody we talked about up until Marvin Bagley. So
right, and so here's my point going back to that first question I asked you.
Yeah.
Like if I hold pick 10 in a rookie draft and the 9 that I have ranked go, and Marvin Bagley is sitting there at number 10, and we got the rest of the guys that are below him, like I'm just kind of sitting there going like, man, I really wish I had Andrew Wiggins back.
Well, I actually think there's a couple guys I would draft ahead of Marvin Bagley that you have below here. Not this guy, though. The guy you have at number 11. You have Miles Bridges. And he's kind of like the forgotten Bridges. You know, like everybody's talking about Mikal, 3-and-D. And like Miles Bridges is like 3-and-D, right? Like he's very similar to Mikal Bridges, just a lower ceiling.
Yeah, and well, here's the thing I always kind of liked about Miles Bridges at Michigan State, right? Like I always thought he showed the ability to be an NBA player. Like he's 6'7", so he's small.
Yeah.
And his best position is probably power forward. Like as crazy as that seems, like he's in very many ways compared to Draymond Green.
He's like a mini Draymond.
Right, and that's not a great comparison.
No.
So the counting numbers, and this is what makes his translations for fantasy bad. His sophomore year, the counting numbers, especially on the defensive end, dropped quite a bit. And it was because he went from playing more 4 to playing more 3 because Jaren Jackson Jr. shifted him out.
Yes.
So that kind of dropped all his numbers a little bit. What I like about him is I've seen a lot of like real good little things, right? He looks like a good rebounder. He looks like he can handle the ball and pass a little bit, which I like. He's shown the ability to block a shot and a half a game in college. You got to like that. He can score a little bit. He can shoot threes at a pretty decent clip. He is a decent field goal shooter. Like he's shown the ability to hit his free throws. Like he just does a lot of stuff. I don't know that he's going to play a lot of minutes in Charlotte, especially early on. But no. I feel like he's an NBA player.
He probably won't play a lot of minutes, which I completely understand. His ranking when you talk about how many minutes he's going to play. His ceiling is also pretty like across the board. Like he's going to be like he could be a top 100 player in the future. Maybe a perennial. There's like top 80 player even if he kind of puts it all together. But like nothing super stands out with him, and his floor is actually pretty high. Like you were saying, like he looks like NBA ready. Another guy who came out of Michigan State, Denzel Valentine, kind of had a lot of the same remarks. Like he can pass a little bit more. He's a good rebounder he's like a oversized guard, small wing, something in between kind of player. And it's like, well, Denzel Valentine didn't turn out that well. I think Miles Bridges will turn out better. I think they're both NBA players, but fantasy-wise, Miles Bridges isn't exciting for me because of the minutes, but also just like in general, like I think it's going to be a couple years before you see Miles Bridges' stock move up.
And here's the thing I'll say about all these guys, like especially at this point, right? Like there's a lot of fungibility here. Like if you wanted to say even like my number 14 guy was your number 10 guy, I'd be like, okay, I can see that.
Well,
like
you're not gonna get too bent out of shape about that,
right? Like here is the point in the draft, maybe more than anything, right? Like if you're talking about one of these rookie drafts where it's like, I could see a lot of these guys being something, and I could see a lot of them being nothing. And so I feel good about the safety here, and that's kind of what pushed him up to number 11. Is I think he's an NBA player.
Yeah, if you're in a dynasty league and you have him for the next 7 years, I think you're going to get a bigger league relevant player out of it.
But here's the other thing too. Like if I'm in a 14-team dynasty league and I'm a rebuilding team that traded for this pick from a contending team, I'm not picking Miles Bridges. Like if I need to hit a home run with this pick, I'm not picking Miles Bridges.
Yeah. Let's talk about maybe those home run guys now, because I think we got 3 in a row coming up here. This one was kind of the essential home run pick that everyone in the real draft passed on. Michael Porter Jr., who is having his second back surgery. Not the best sign, but that potential of being a just a very oversized scoring. I mean, he was compared to Kevin Durant by himself, which is probably a bad idea. But I think you kind of compared him earlier to Andrew Wiggins. If that's his ceiling, Michael Porter isn't terribly exciting, but I think his ceiling might be a little higher than Andrew Wiggins until he had that second back surgery.
So I think
why do you have Michael Porter ranked here?
I think you're totally right about that. I think that the ceiling on this player is decently high, right?
Yes.
And I said this leading up to the draft.
He was the number 1 ranked player out of high school.
Yes. And then Marvin Bagley kind of passed him. And like now looking back on that, like those two being the top 2 players in the class is
kind of a joke.
Pretty laughable. But Luka Doncic wasn't in the class, so that's
also true.
Because I mean, obviously he was not a high school player in the States. So about Michael Porter, I think he can shoot. He didn't show that he could shoot, but he played 3 games. Like the amount of actual game action we've seen of this kid, right, other than against high school talent, is very small. Right, like we saw him play a little bit of USA basketball. He played 3 games at Missouri as he was coming back from a back surgery, which they said would keep him out the whole year, right? So he maybe kind of rushed back a little bit from that back surgery, which wasn't the smartest idea. So if you want to talk ceiling, I think the ceiling is a guy who could score 20 points a game in the NBA. A guy who could be a decent rebounder. There's never going to be much assists. He's probably only going to get you like a steal a game, maybe 1.2 as like a ceiling. I don't see much blocks, and he's going to be a volume shooter. Like I don't think he's going to shoot a great field goal percentage, and the free throws are probably going to be somewhere in the range of 8. So there's a ceiling. The floor is he never really gets healthy enough to play.
Yeah,
I mean, like that's the worst case.
The floor is never plays basketball.
Right.
And that's a pretty steep floor, which would make me avoid someone like Michael Porter Jr. Obviously, he is not relevant next year because he's having a backiotomy.
And here's the thing, right? Like, I've heard people say that they don't think he's going to play at all next year. And I will say this. I don't know about the procedure he just had because I haven't seen a lot of, like, actual information on it. If you're a football fan, the first surgery he had is supposedly the same one Peyton Manning had that basically ended his career.
Not a great sign.
Yeah. So
but then again, Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl after that surgery. Yeah,
but my point being is, like, I think there was some significant long-term effects of that surgery. Now, Peyton Manning was a much older man, and it's a different sport. But to downplay the severity of the surgery he had is not a wise move. And I think you saw him slip in the draft because everyone was worried about
as they should be, and I think he should slip in this draft as well. I don't think I would swing for the fences with Michael Porter. I think I would swing for the fences with one of these next 2 guys that you have. At number 13, you have Zaire Smith, who climbed up the rankings in the regular draft during workouts and ended up in Philly. Zaire Smith looks like a pretty damn good NBA player.
Okay, why?
He looks like he has all the tools needed to be a very good NBA player.
Okay, I'll buy that.
I think the package is there. If he can put it together, he will be able to have a long career in this league.
Yes. He is very much a flashy athlete.
Yes.
He's a guy that you watch like play 1-on-0 and you're like, damn, that looks good, man. Look at that dunk and that jump and that, flash and flash and flash and flash. He's another guy. This is total upside shot.
Why are you out on Zaire Smith? From what I've seen him play, like, it looks like he's gonna have a place in the league. I wouldn't say he has a place in the league like Mikal Bridges does, because those guys have these 3-and-D roles that just exist for them, and those are always needed. Zaire Smith's gonna have to put his game together in order to be relevant, but he has every tool possible in order to be a good NBA player.
And so so my worry is kind of twofold, right? He's on the Sixers. So, like, what minutes do you really see for him this year?
Close to 0.
Right, as a developing player, right? Like, not a lot. And we've seen these guys that people get excited for because they're flashy athletes, and then them never really put their game together. Yeah, like, I think the floor here
especially during summer league.
Right, I think the floor here is very low. Now,
where you can be an athlete, like a super athlete, and get away with, like, it's kind of like in college when you're like a good athlete, you can get away with a lot of stuff because these guys are like going to be fucking business administrators, like half the guys you're playing against. But the super athletes can get away with it in summer league, and then they come into the league and everyone's a super athlete, and they don't have the talent or the tools or the vision or the NBA intelligence, just the basketball IQ to put it all together,
and that's my worry,
to stay on the court. And that, I think I'm with you there. I think he's got the ability to be a good basketball player. I like him.
Here's what I'll say about the fantasy game, right? He averaged 1.1 steals and 1.1 blocks in 28 minutes a game for Texas Tech.
That's cool.
He shot really good percentages, 55.6% from the field and 45 on 3-pointers.
I like that. That's nice.
The 3-pointers was over a whopping 40 attempts, though.
That's not that nice.
In 37 games. And he averaged 5 rebounds, 1.8 assists, and 11.3 points. And here's the other part of this. He played for Texas Tech. Name me another player on Texas Tech.
Doug McDermott.
Yeah, no, that's not one. So, I mean, I
see what you're getting at. His ceiling, like, overall, like, so let's say he meets his ceiling. Is he standard league relevant? Maybe.
Right. Like, there's the potential that he's a top 50 player. Like, I think he actually has kind of a high ceiling with those good steal and block numbers, right? Like,
yeah, that's what I like. That's what I like.
If he can shoot those percentages in the NBA, which he's not going to shoot 45% from 3 in the NBA, but like, if he could he's a pretty good shooter on both percentages, good steals, good blocks. Like, you're starting to get kind of an interesting roto player. I'm also a little worried that he played 28 minutes on Texas Tech.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look too far into that.
But, like, who the hell was playing over him? Like, this guy's shooting 55%. We couldn't get him out there for 30 minutes a game. I mean, he started 21 games for Texas Tech. Like, he kind of came out of nowhere.
You are right that, like, minutes are the most important number here, and, like, being on Philly, he's not going to get those minutes. I don't think he's relevant next year, or he's definitely not draftable. I don't know if he can be relevant next year just based on his situation.
And here's the thing too, like, okay, he's a small forward, or he's like a shooting guard, small forward type, right? Like, do you see those minutes opening up in Philly? Like who's going to open those minutes for him?
No, definitely.
Right? Like, okay, they could let JJ Redick go, I guess, but like, he's still going to be like the 6th option on Philly. Right? Like, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. I'm hitting Robert Covington for an open 3 before Zaire Smith, probably.
Maybe. Well, that's a toss-up, I think.
We don't. I'll say this about him too. We don't really know what he can shoot from 3. He shot 40 attempts, right? Like,
yeah, we have no idea if he's actually a 3-point shooter.
Like, Steph Curry shoots 40 attempts in what, like, 8 games, 7 games? You know what I mean? Like, are we going to judge Steph Curry's 7-game sample at any point on his 3-point percentage? Like, no, we're not going to do it.
I'm going to judge him. I'm with you there. Like, there's a lot of question marks here. And the biggest question mark is where is he going to get minutes, and that's the most important thing. So fantasy-wise, not relevant, not draftable. I would actually say the guy you got at 14, I have much higher than a lot of these guys we talked about who aren't relevant,
So
who
you're
aren't draftable. I think this guy is relevant. I don't know if I'm going to draft him. I don't know if he is draftable. He might be, but he's definitely relevant next year. This is Colin Sexton on Cleveland, who sounds like he is going to be playing quite a few minutes for the Cleveland Cavaliers next year.
Are you excited about that?
I'm excited in the fact that it's hard to look away from a starting point guard in the NBA when you start looking at fantasy. You got a guy who's going to have the ball in his hands. That team is going to probably suck.
Can I
know what Kevin Love? I know he just re-signed there. I don't know what kind of world Kevin Love and Colin Sexton could what kind of duo that could be. It's a little, at least somewhat intriguing.
Can I read you his stat line from Alabama?
Yeah, sure. Feel free.
Okay, so 19.2 points in basically 30 minutes a game.
Okay.
That's good, right?
Scoring.
Okay. 3.8 rebounds.
All right, okay.
3.6 assists.
Okay.
0.8 steals.
Okay.
1/10 of a block.
That's not a real number.
2.8 turnovers.
Okay.
1.3 3-pointers a game on 33.6% from the shorter college line.
That's not. I don't like that very much.
And he shot 44% from the field and 77% from the foul line.
77% from the foul line.
So
I don't like that a lot either.
Here's what I said about Colin Sexton kind of all the way up through the draft process. I think his ceiling is Lou Williams. He's a scorer off the bench.
He's a 6-man at best.
Yeah. He's a microwave guy. He gets in there.
Right. Well, Lou Williams was like in the top 25 last year.
Okay. For fantasy, yeah, he was.
That's what I'm talking about.
But is he going to be able to steal the ball as much as him? Probably not.
Probably not.
Is he going to be really getting a decent number of assists? Like, we haven't seen that.
I think if he's going to be running a system with Kevin Love, and he's going to be the primary ball handler, and he's going to be a point guard, those assist numbers will go up. Like, who the hell was he passing it to on Alabama? Like, who the hell else is on that team?
Okay, I'm with you. Not a lot was on that team. But if we look at Lou Williams, every year before last year when he went completely bonkers, right? Like, he gets you 15, 16, 17 points. He gets you like a steal a game. He gets you like 2.5, 3.5 assists, like 2.5, 3 rebounds, like a couple 3-pointers. And I actually think that Lou Williams is a much better 3-point shooter than Colin Sexton. And he's a much better free throw shooter than Colin Sexton.
Sure.
But
Colin Sexton, I'm saying...
You're saying he's going to get big
fantasy
minutes.
relevant is going to start on the Cleveland Cavaliers, as far as we know, is relevant enough to take a look at. Am I saying draft him? Am I saying he's better than Lou Williams? Am I saying he's a top 50 player? Am I taking him ahead of any of those top 6 guys that we talked about? Probably not. Probably a big no on all of those things. Trae Young definitely going to be a better fantasy player than Colin Sexton. Do I care about him a lot more than Miles Bridges, Michael Porter Jr., Kevin Knox? Yeah, I do. I think he is someone to keep an eye on. If you want to take a last round flyer on him, I would disagree with that choice. But he's going to be relevant with his minutes. So based on his minutes next season, does that make him a standard league player? There's a potential there to say yes, and also he could flounder out.
Okay, so Mark and I are on the same page in this one, in some ways, and in some ways not.
Sure.
Okay? So Mark has him projected for 26 minutes a game. I think that's a safe estimate.
That's fair. Yeah, that's very safe.
Okay. I'm gonna fight back on his assist number regardless of how much he plays. Like if he even plays 32 minutes a game, like I don't know that he averages 5 assists. Because look at some of the guys on that team. Like, okay, Kevin Love will let him assist the ball. Is J.R. Smith really like J.R. Smith runs
J.R. Smith gets hot though.
Line, so you can't get an assist though.
If he gets hot though, watch out for JR.
You know what I mean? And it's like I don't see a lot of like Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson let anyone assist him the ball. He's out there dribbling and shooting.
That's very true.
You know what I mean? Like who's he gonna set up? Who's he gonna give these dimes to?
I'm gonna say so. Mark Roberts has about 26 minutes, 2.9 assists a game. I think that's a little insulting.
Okay, so he's ranked 251st at 26 minutes a game.
A
15-minute Kenneth Faried is ranked ahead of him.
I like Kenneth Faried.
My point in saying that is I don't think the ceiling is super high. I don't think the floor is super high because I don't think he's a great fantasy player in any one particular category other than maybe he scores you 15 points a game. And the opportunity is the best thing, right? Like
I'm gonna disagree. Like he's gonna play, he's gonna start, he's gonna play on an NBA team, he's gonna play with Kevin Love. And but I'm gonna keep track of him. I'm gonna make sure he does. If he's blowing up, I get him on my team.
And that's with your assumption that he's gonna start.
Yes,
I'm not making that.
And that's fair.
I would think, and here's my honest opinion, right? I would not be surprised if they started Jordan Clarkson and J.R. Smith in the backcourt over Colin Sexton. Like I just don't think he's that good. And I'm not to say those two players are.
I mean, I'm not gonna. I guess I'm not gonna argue that you should draft him over the guys we talked about earlier, who we said were standard league relevant. But I'm also gonna say I think you almost have him at a not relevant at all. Draft pick here on your rookie draft, and I think he's relevant.
So if you're the type of team, right, in a 14-team league, like you're a contending team, sure, pick him over Zaire Smith and Michael Porter and Miles Bridges, maybe even Marvin Bagley, maybe even Gilgeous-Alexander, right, if you're really feeling froggy. But if you're a rebuilding team, like what is the ceiling here? Like,
so you're saying like
I'm saying
you said this at the beginning, so let me I guess adjust my argument towards how you rank these. Is like, as an asset, is Colin Sexton a 3 to 4 year asset more than some of these other guys? And the answer is probably at first yes, but then eventually no.
Yes, that you're hitting the nail on the head right there. And I also think too that like his stock may sour really quick if those guys are playing over him. Like people might be like,
he's like the exact opposite of Michael Porter Jr., which is no, eventually maybe.
Right, like you know what I mean. Like if you're playing J.R. Smith and Jordan Clarkson big minutes over Colin Sexton, like at what point are you just like, man, maybe Colin Sexton ain't that good?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like pretty quick. Like his stock could sour in a second.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. And he could also have like 3 good games to start out the season. Every idiot is going to be on Colin Sexton, which you should immediately trade him. But I think the possibilities are a little wider than you might be giving Colin Sexton credit for.
So after this point, I think the crapshoot begins.
This is a full crapshoot. So I'm with you. I would agree. A lot of these names, first off, some of these guys, I've never even heard of them in my entire life, because they are not standard league relevant, and most of them won't be. Let's do a lightning round of the next like maybe 8 or 9. Because some of these names I actually have heard of. And some of these guys, we've already even mentioned this podcast. So, yeah, number 15, you have Lonnie Walker. Why should we care about Lonnie Walker?
He can score.
All right, I like it. Kevin Huerter?
Kevin Huerter. So this is a guy who didn't play in Summer League.
Yeah.
So this could be a very underrated guy.
On Atlanta.
The Hawks are apparently wanting to play him from everything I've heard.
Okay, that's weird.
That's a positive. Good 3-point shooter. Kind of got a 3-and-D what do I want to say? He's kind of got a 3-and-D profile, but I'm not certain about the D part. I'm not as sold as some people on his defense. But I do think he's going to be a good three-point shooter. And I feel pretty safe about him playing some. You died. But you're back. I can't hear you. Are you alive? Hello. Still can't hear you. Are you there? Are you a person? I don't think you're a person. Hello? I think you're gone. I can hear you. Are you alive? I hear you making noise.
Hello.
Are you alive?
Yeah, I just my phone, my computer was about to die, and I was like, well, if that happens, we're real fucked. So I had to grab the power cords.
It's all good.
Everything cool?
Yeah. That's good. I was stumbling over myself anyways.
All right, Kevin here. Can he score?
Can he score? He's not going to be a big scorer, but like as a guy who can get a steal a game and hit some 3-pointers and do a little bit here and there, like that's kind of where I like him as a 3-and-D type.
Okay.
A crap Mikal Bridges.
All right, that's worth at least looking into. DeAnthony Melton on Houston, a guy it sounds like Houston kind of likes.
Yeah, right. So he looks like a big defensive stats guy. He was always known as a defensive player at USC the year he played, and then he didn't get to play last year because he got suspended. The jump shot's a bit of a work in progress, but it is looking better. He got big rebounds and assists in college with big steals, and he averaged a block a game in his only year at USC.
Those are nice fantasy stats. I like that. I'm going to keep an eye on him. Mitchell Robinson had a great summer league, and I know that's why people are watching him. But what do you like? Do you like his potential next year on the Knicks?
There looks like there might be a role for him, right? Some minutes, which you like. I also like the fact that he's big and athletic and he looks like he can hang, right? Like some of those big athletic guys, right? They get bullied in the post and they don't look super good. Like he looked athletic enough to get out and guard on the wing and also rim protect and block some shots. If you're a big man who can play minutes and block some shots, I'm kind of interested.
Well, he's going to have to get playing time over Joakim Noah first. So good luck with that, Mitchell Robinson. Former fourth runner-up in MVP voting, Joakim Noah. Next on the list at number 19, Troy Brown Jr., Washington.
So he's a guy who's probably not going to get a ton of minutes right away, right? Like there's a lot of impediments to him actually playing. What I like about him, though, is he's a real athletic guy. He showed the ability, 1.6 steals a game at Oregon. He's a guy I've been into for a while. Like once I started covering the draft, he can handle the ball a little bit. He can get rebounds, get assists, get steals, and that's what's going to make him interesting.
I like that. Washington might actually have a reason to play him at some point. Like that team's real weird, and someone might get moved because they all hate each other. So you never know. Troy Brown Jr. might end up getting more minutes than you might think you would originally. All right, gonna give it a shot. Number 20, Josh Okogie.
Hoagie.
Kogi.
Okay, so the interesting thing about Okogie, he averaged 1.8 steals and a block a game.
The bad thing is he's in Minnesota, and Tibbs hates rookies.
Right. So this is a guy for down the track, but he's another guy, kind of a defensive wing type, can handle the ball a little bit. He's interesting.
All right, so that is your top 20 overall. You got my boy Chandler Hutchinson pretty far down the list, and I think he's good. He's going to play more minutes than you think. Grayson Allen at 32. Here's just some of the highlights. Dante DiVincenzo way down there at 39. I'm with that ranking. That's a good one. If you want to get this full rookie ranking all the way down to the bottom, all the way down to 58 from Tyler, we would really, really, really appreciate it if you went to our Patreon and became one of our Patreon subscribers to get the entire rookie list. It is at patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. Is there any other players on this list that you want to you kind of want to spotlight?
Okay, so there's two guys.
Okay.
A guy I think a lot of people are sleeping on. He's 25 on my list. Bruce Brown. He had a real good freshman year at Miami. He got hurt his sophomore year. Didn't play as good. Kind of slipped in the draft. He looked real good in summer league for Detroit. I don't know that the minutes are going to be there next year, but he's kind of a guy I'm keeping my eye on, a guy that I kind of really like.
Also, what's going on in Detroit? I don't know.
Well, and they got Dwayne Casey now, right? So that could be interesting. And the other guy I'll mention is 24 on my list, Elliot Kobo. He could literally be the Suns' starting point guard at some point this year.
That is crazy.
They got Brandon Knight coming back, right? This is a French point guard. Like, most people have probably never even seen this kid play. I don't think he's going to be super exciting for fantasy, but at the same time, like, if I got a second-round rookie pick in like a 14 or 16-team league, and I'm looking for any kind of production next year, worth a flyer. Yeah, worth a flyer, just in the sense that he might play minutes, and we talk about it all the time, right? Minutes could be the most important thing.
Minutes matter. You have Grayson Allen at 32, who had a very fantasy-friendly stat line during summer league, even though Grayson Allen is a piece of shit. So
he's the
any interest in his stat lines when they look like he could put up kind of like Joe Ingles light?
I worry about a guy like Grayson Allen, even when they dominate summer league, in the sense that he played 4 years at Duke. He's significantly older. We saw him very up and down in his time at Duke, right? Like, he had some real good years and some kind of crap years, and that worries me. I'm not huge on Grayson Allen. If you really want to pick him, I mean, sure, go ahead.
I'm not in on that guy at all in any way, shape, or form. He's also, his fantasy stat line is somewhat interesting per minute possibility. When he starts playing against dudes who are super athletic, that all might just fall apart. Also, he's not going to play.
Right, and then that's my point, right? Is like, he's older than some of these guys on the Jazz's roster.
Yeah,
right? Like,
older
just
than
because he's
Donovan Mitchell.
Right, doesn't mean anything, right? Like, he's older than a lot of these guys, and a lot of these guys are probably ahead of him in the rotation. So it's like, he's not that much younger, right? He was born in October of 95. In July 1995, Dante Exum was born.
There you go.
So you know what I mean? Like, and Dante Exum's got what, 4 years of experience in the NBA? Like,
well, he didn't play some of those years.
Okay, but is Allen going to be ahead of Exum, right? Like, they're relatively the same age.
Good point.
You know what I mean? Like, if Exum's ahead of you in the rotation, like, okay, you can say, oh, I'm a rookie, but, like, you're just as old as him. So I don't really ever see him being even, like, a standard league fantasy contributor, in the sense I don't think he ever really gets that kind of minutes.
Yeah, I don't think he ever gets the minutes either. And it was just that his summer league stats probably piqued the interest of quite a few people, and I think that's going to be overblown.
There's one guy that's below him that's probably worth mentioning too, and that's Javon Carter, plays for Memphis.
That's not a real person, I don't think.
He is a staunch defender, and so, like, he could be interesting even next year, maybe as like a defensive stat streamer, like especially steals. He's a real good steals guy. Maybe think like Tony Allen, right? Like you're trying to win your week in steals, and you need somebody.
They could need a player like that on Memphis.
Right. So if he's getting the minutes, you know what I mean? Like his steals could be good enough to be a streamer. Like he's not a guy you're going to want to hold the whole season. But yeah, so that's a guy I'm kind of keeping my eye on too.
I like that. This is a very extensive list. Tyler did a fantastic job putting this together. Like I said, patreon.com/watchingtheboxes if you want the full list. Our top 10, Luka Doncic, DeAndre Ayton, Jaren Jackson Jr., Wendell Carter, Trae Young, Mo Bamba, President Mo Bamba, all could be basically close to draftable or draftable next year, followed by Kevin Knox, Mikal Bridges, Gilgeous-Alexander, and Bagley. All we considered fantasy standard league relevant next year. So a very deep rookie draft going into next season. I think that's going to be it for tonight. We do really appreciate you guys listening, and if you want to get a hold of us, you have questions about this about the rookie listings that we've given out here. If you got questions about some of the other stuff we talked about, if you want to hear more dynasty type of talk, if you want to hear mock drafts in the future, we're just taking open feedback. You can find me on Twitter at WatchingTheBoxes, and you can finally find Tyler on a real Twitter name at Tyler P. Watts. Please hit us up with feedback on the podcast or just topics you want to hear about, or if you got questions about your league. And if you like the podcast, do us a favor. It's really easy. Rate and review us on whatever you're listening to this to. It takes like a half a minute, and it really helps us out as well. So thanks, guys, and I guess we will be talking to you soon. Thanks, everybody.